Chapter 187. After listening to Deacon Chi's explanation, Hang Chen and the others understood that Dragon Mountain was so important. No wonder the sect master was so determined to obtain Dragon Mountain. Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai could imagine that as long as they won this competition and protected Dragon Mountain for the sect, they would definitely be rewarded and valued by the sect master. In the future, their status in the sect would be even higher and they would receive the best treatment. They might even be like Hang Chen, receiving extra training from the sect master and being nurtured as elite geniuses. Deacon Chi added, now that 2 months have passed, the sect master and guest elder Huangfu still haven't been able to break the heaven essence array. The ancient tomb's protective array is too exquisite. But the sky pillar sect is stronger, has a deeper foundation, and is more proficient in array formations. Moreover, there are 2 heaven essence experts in the sect. If the Sky Pillar sect obtains Dragon Mountain, they will definitely be able to break the array within 3 years. At that time, they will obtain the treasures and martial arts inheritances in the ancient tomb and will be even stronger. Speaking of this, Deacon Chi looked at the 3 with a solemn expression and said, now, do you understand how important your mission is? Hang Chen and the others nodded and said solemnly, disciple understands. Deacon Chi nodded slightly and revealed a satisfied expression. All right, this matter ends here. You must keep your mouths shut and not leak the slightest bit of information. Hang Chen and Yin Feiyang hurriedly nodded and solemnly expressed that they would keep this a secret. Soon after, Deacon Chi left the secret room. Hang Chen and the others remained in the secret room and discussed their next mission in low voices. The 3 discussed for a while and quickly made up their minds. Since they had already caused the Sky Pillar sect disciples to be disgusted by their sword practice in the square, they would no longer display their sword skills. In 2 days, they would directly go to the Wind Cloud Courtyard and exchange pointers with the Wind Cloud Courtyard's disciples. This way, they could not only investigate the strength of the Wind Cloud Courtyard's disciples but also attract the attention of the outer sect disciples. 2 days quickly passed. On the morning of the 3rd day, Ji Tianqing was meditating in his room, nourishing his true essence in sword embryo and consolidating his martial arts realm. Suddenly, a bell rang outside the courtyard. Ji Tianqing hurriedly stopped and quickly walked out of the room, rushing towards the main hall. He walked into the courtyard and found that there were many outer sect disciples gathered in the courtyard, looking curiously into the main hall. At the same time, several disciples of the Storm Courtyard also hurried to the main hall. After everyone entered the main hall, they saw Han Xiuxing sitting at the head seat. On the right side of the hall, there were 3 young men sitting cross-legged on the ground, waiting calmly. Ji Tianqing and the others immediately recognized the 3 people as Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and Ran Donglai. Han Xiuxing waved his hand, indicating for Ji Tianqing and the others to sit on the left side of the hall. Thus, Ji Tianqing and the others sat in a row, facing Hang Chen and the other 2. Han Xiuxing announced in a dignified voice, ladies and gentlemen, I've called you here today because 3 disciples of the Tianjian sect invited you here. They want to hold a small martial arts exchange. Everyone can exchange and discuss martial arts and learn from each other. You can speak freely. I will not interfere. After speaking, Han Xiuxing left the hall, allowing everyone to communicate with each other. The hall fell into silence, and the atmosphere was somewhat awkward. On the surface, both sides looked normal, but in fact, they both had their own thoughts and were deeply hostile to each other. The disciples of the Storm Courtyard did not speak, but the 3 disciples of the Tianjian sect could not help but speak. Ran Donglai's eyes swept over everyone, and he smiled slightly, saying, since all of you are so modest and are not willing to exchange questions first, then I will boldly ask a question first. Last month, I collected 13 kinds of medicinal herbs, such as wind wormwood, soul-returning grass, mulberry heart flower, magnolia fruit, goose sandalwood seed, 1,000-mile leaf. Using the Heavenly Star Big Dipper art and the 3 literary true fires, I wanted to refine 3 soul-returning pills to enhance my cultivation. Junior brothers, is there a problem with this method? Where is the crux of the failure? How can it be improved? Hearing Ran Donglai's question, everyone understood. Ran Donglai was good at alchemy, and he wanted to test them with alchemy. The disciples looked at each other and frowned, deep in thought. After a moment, Shi Jingsheng, who was proficient in alchemy, seemed to understand something, and he couldn't help but reveal a confident expression. He quietly glanced at Ji Tianxing, and seeing that Ji Tianxing was expressionless and had no intention of speaking, he took the lead and said, "Senior brother Ran, of course there is a problem with this method. First of all, you chose the wrong medicinal herbs. Since you added the magnolia fruit, you shouldn't have used the 1,000-mile leaf. The medicinal properties of the two medicinal herbs will clash, and it will inevitably cause an adverse reaction, leading to failure. Secondly, you used the 3 literary and 4 martial true flames. You should have used the 4 literary and 3 martial true flames to be more balanced. Speaking of improvement, I have already explained the method of using the true flames. The medicinal herbs also need to be changed. If you replace the 1,000-mile leaf with heavenly trust grass, the effect will be better." When the disciples of the storm courtyard saw that Shi Jingsheng was full of confidence, they revealed gratified and expectant expressions. In their opinion, since Shi Jingsheng was so confident, he naturally won this round of debate. Unexpectedly, after Ran Donglai heard this, he revealed a playful smile. His tone was somewhat regretful as he said, "Although this junior brother has a good understanding of alchemy and has a solid foundation, junior brother is still too young. However, junior martial brother is still young, and his experience is still too shallow. In fact, there is no problem with my alchemy method. I completely followed the prescription, and I really did successfully refine the origin restoring pill. This junior brother's understanding is only baseless conjecture and deduction. If you personally try to refine the pill, you will know that what you said is completely wrong." After saying this, Ran Donglai took out a small jade bottle from his sleeve and poured out 3 dark red pills. They were the origin restoring pills. Shi Jingsheng's expression suddenly became unsightly, and his eyes were filled with shame and indignation. The disciples of the storm courtyard were also astonished, and they found it hard to believe. Shi Jingsheng frowned and asked in a deep voice, "Senior brother Ran, you clearly said that you failed to refine the pill and asked us about the crux of the problem and how to improve it. After I finished speaking, you said that you refined the pill and that there was no problem with the method. Are you deliberately playing with me?" Ran Donglai smiled and shook his head. "Junior brother, carefully recall my words. When did I say that I failed to refine the pill? I only asked a question and everyone discussed it. Junior brother, your understanding of alchemy isn't deep enough, so you believe that I failed. Could it be that you blame me?" Shi Jingsheng was suddenly speechless, and his face was ashen from anger. He had lost all face and didn't want to stay in the hall to continue the exchange. However, if he got up and left, it would seem ungentlemanly and make Ran Donglai laugh at him. At this time, Yin Feiyang smiled and said, "Just now, junior brother Ran raised a question about alchemy. Perhaps everyone is obsessed with martial arts and isn't proficient in alchemy, so you couldn't answer it. Since that's the case, let's continue the exchange. It just so happens that I have a question about martial arts cultivation in my heart. I'll say it for everyone to discuss and see if junior brothers can help me. As everyone knows, martial artists use their dantian to store true essence and use their 9 main meridians to circulate true essence throughout their body. However, I have a senior brother from the same sect who uses his 10 main meridians to circulate true essence, making the power of his true essence far surpass that of ordinary martial artists. His martial arts aptitude is also outstanding. I've never understood how such a miraculous thing could happen. I wonder if junior brothers can dispel my doubts." Shi Jingsheng had just been tricked by Ran Donglai, so when he heard Yin Feiyang's question, he subconsciously sneered, "Huh, senior brother Yin, do you think we'll be tricked again? The human body only has 9 main meridians, this is a well-known fact. Your senior brother from the same sect actually has 10 main meridians? I think you're lying. Your senior brother doesn't have 10 main meridians." Chapter 188. Shi Jingsheng's words were exactly what the disciples of the Wind Cloud sect wanted to say. They had already been tricked by Ran Donglai, so how could they be tricked by Yin Feiyang again? Yin Feiyang heard Shi Jingqing's reproach and bore everyone's questioning gazes, but his expression did not change. He revealed a playful smile and said with certainty, "Junior brother, you're being overly cautious. My senior brother does indeed have 10 main meridians. Since none of you have seen such a miraculous thing and can't explain it to me, I'll be frank. My senior brother who has 10 main meridians is sitting beside me. He is senior brother Hang Chen." Shi Jingqing and the other disciples' expressions suddenly changed as they looked at Hang Chen in unison. Yin Feiyang pointed at Hang Chen beside him and said proudly, "Senior brother Hang Chen's physique is different from ordinary people. He has the top profound rank sword fighting bloodline, so he was born with an extra main meridian. It's because he has the sword fighting bloodline that he can achieve twice the result with half the effort when cultivating martial arts. He also has extraordinary comprehension and aptitude for the sword principle. When he was only 18, he broke through to the mystic comprehending realm. Only 2 years have passed, and he has reached the 5th level of the mystic comprehending realm." Speaking of this, Yin Feiyang could not help but reveal an envious expression. In the courtyard outside the hall, hundreds of outer sect disciples had gathered. They had been listening to the sounds in the hall. When they heard Yin Feiyang's words, their faces were filled with shock and they exclaimed. Many disciples could not help but discuss. They felt that the strength of the Tianjian sect's disciples was incredible. At the same time, many outer sect disciples were worried about the Dragon Mountain tournament. There were even people who whispered pessimistically that the Wind Cloud sect would definitely lose this tournament. It was impossible to take back Dragon Mountain. For a moment, the courtyard was noisy. Yin Feiyang, Ran Donglai, and the other two heard the exclamations and discussions outside the courtyard and secretly sneered with satisfaction. This situation was exactly what they wanted to see. Seeing that everyone was silent, Yin Feiyang continued, "The human body has 9 meridians. This is indeed a well-known fact. However, this is only limited to ordinary people and does not include natural geniuses. A genius like senior brother Hang Chen is born with a special bloodline, so his talent far surpasses ours, and his combat strength far surpasses martial practitioners of the same level. Junior brothers, you can't even guess this? Have you never seen a genius with a special bloodline? Or perhaps, there's almost no such genius among the outer court disciples of your esteemed sect?" As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the disciples of the Tempest Hall immediately changed. Their eyes were filled with shame and indignation. Yin Feiyang was too arrogant. He was clearly mocking the Tempest Hall's disciples for being short-sighted and mocking the Sky Pillar sect for having no one in the outer sect. The outer court disciples in the courtyard also understood the meaning behind Yin Feiyang's words, and a burst of discussion immediately erupted. Everyone was very disgusted with Yin Feiyang and wished they could scold him to his face. Unfortunately, they were only disciples of the White Dew Courtyard and Riverflow Courtyard. Being able to enter the Tempest Courtyard to watch the martial arts exchange between the geniuses was already a blessing. They didn't have the right to enter the hall and talk to Yin Feiyang and the others. As a result, the numerous outer court disciples could only silently pray, hoping that the disciples of the Tempest Hall would launch a counterattack and regain their dignity. The atmosphere in the hall became more and more subtle. Everyone understood that Hang Chen's group was clearly using the martial arts exchange as an excuse to flaunt their prowess and deliberately belittle and suppress the Tempest Hall. However, this was a martial arts exchange, so they could speak freely. Moreover, Ran Donglai and Yin Feiyang didn't spout nonsense to slander the Tempest Hall. It was because they were short-sighted and couldn't refute the other party, giving them the opportunity to make fun of them. Several disciples were filled with shame and indignation. They secretly clenched their fists and forcefully suppressed their anger. At this moment, Ji Tianxing, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. He calmly looked at Yin Feiyang and asked in a deep voice, "Senior brother Yin just said that the human body stores true essence in the Dantian and circulates true essence in the 9 main meridians. This is something everyone knows. Then I would like to ask senior brother Yin, if a person's Dantian was crippled, would they be unable to cultivate and could only become a cripple? Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai were startled. They looked at him with a strange expression and the corners of their mouths hooked up into a smile. I didn't think that junior brother Ji would ask such a question. If the Dantian was crippled, there wouldn't even be a place to store true essence. How could one cultivate? This is a truth that even a 3-year-old child knows. Is there a need to ask? It was clear that Yin Feiyang and Ran Donglai both felt that Ji Tianqing asking such an idiotic question was simply laughable. After hearing Ji Tianqing's question, the hundreds of outer court disciples in the courtyard immediately burst into an uproar. Many people revealed looks of disdain. There were even some people who laughed and shook their heads. Even more people were discussing whether Ji Tianqing's brain had been flooded with water. Did this guy think that the Tempest Hall hadn't lost enough face? Asking such an idiotic question, did he not feel the pain of being slapped in the face? In the main hall, several Tempest Hall disciples looked as if their parents had died. Their faces were gloomy. Originally, when they saw Ji Tianqing ask such a question, they thought that he had some brilliant plan to regain some face for the Tempest Hall. But when they heard Ji Tianqing's question, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Their faces became even uglier. Although they didn't question or ridicule Ji Tianqing to his face, they secretly sighed and felt a deep sense of helplessness. I thought that Ji Tianqing was going to make a big move and ruthlessly slap Yin Feiyang's face. Is Ji Tianqing joking? I thought he was going to step back. This is a question that even an idiot knows. He actually asked it. Does he really want our Tempest Hall to become a laughingstock? There are so many outer sect disciples in the courtyard. If they heard Ji Tianqing's words, wouldn't they laugh their heads off? Looking at the reactions of those outer sect disciples, they probably think that our Tempest Hall is an idiot, right? Faced with everyone's doubts and ridicule, Ji Tianqing's expression didn't change. He solemnly asked, since that's the case, Senior Brother Yin and Senior Brother Ran both believe that a person with a crippled Dantian is unable to cultivate, right? Yin Feiyang nodded and said with a smile, if the Dantian is damaged, it can still be repaired. But if the Dantian is crippled, then there is no possibility of cultivating. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth hooked up into a mocking sneer. When I saw Senior Brother Ran and Senior Brother Yin talking so loudly, I thought that you were knowledgeable and knew a lot. I didn't think that the so-called Tianjian sect's geniuses were just people with an undeserved reputation and shallow vision. Now I want to tell you that the Dantian isn't the source of a martial artist's strength, nor is it the only place where true essence is stored. Hearing these words, the Tempest Hall disciples' expressions changed and they all revealed looks of doubt. The hundreds of outer sect disciples in the courtyard also quieted down and looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief, waiting to see how he would explain. Yin Feiyang, Ran Donglai, and Hang Chen all revealed disdainful sneers, waiting to see how Ji Tianqing would justify himself. His words were truly earth-shattering and went against the common sense of martial arts. It was too sensational. If he could give a reasonable explanation and evidence, then it would shock the martial arts world and his name would spread throughout the Tianshan region. On the other hand, if he couldn't give a reasonable explanation and evidence, then he would be playing to the gallery and would become the laughingstock of the Tianshan region. The geniuses of the two sects in the main hall, as well as the hundreds of outer sect disciples in the courtyard, all stared at Ji Tianqing. Everyone held their breath and listened attentively, waiting for his explanation. Chapter 189. Under everyone's questioning gazes, Ji Tianqing opened his mouth. His expression was calm as he said with certainty, the human body is a treasure trove. A martial artist cultivates by absorbing the power of heaven and earth and unearthing the mysteries of this treasure trove. The common people only know that the Dantian is used to store true essence, but they don't know that some people with destroyed Dantians can condense true essence into a birth pill to replace the Dantian. In addition, the meridians and acupuncture points can also store true essence. Using them is much more convenient than using the Dantian, and the power of true essence is much greater. There is only one Dantian, but the human body has 72 acupuncture points. If true essence is stored in the acupuncture points, it will be able to hold an even more boundless amount of true essence. Moreover, after the acupuncture points are tempered by true essence, the meridians will also be strengthened. The martial artist's strength will also greatly increase, and his combat strength will far surpass all martial artists of the same level. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, the disciples of the two sects in the hall all stared with wide eyes, revealing expressions of disbelief. Even the hundreds of outer court disciples in the courtyard let out cries of disbelief as they whispered to each other. Is this true? How come I've never heard of this before? Using true essence to condense a birth pill to replace the dantian? Using meridians and acupuncture points to store true essence? Isn't this too inconceivable? Although Ji Tianqing's words are very shocking, I feel that what he said is reasonable. Perhaps it really can be done? Yes, Ji Tianqing's tone is firm and confident. It doesn't seem like he's making things up. But isn't this too contrary to common sense? If there really is such a cultivation method in this world, how come we don't know about it? In the hall, Hang Chen and Yin Feiyang restrained their sneers as they frowned in contemplation. Ji Tianqing's words forced them to seriously consider. Could this kind of talk hold water? After a moment, Yin Feiyang opened his mouth and said, "Junior apprentice brother Ji, although what you said sounds reasonable, it does not violate common sense. But this is indeed against the common sense of martial arts. Please forgive us for not believing you, unless you can show us proof." Ran Donglai also nodded in agreement. If you don't have evidence, then even if you exaggerate it, it's useless. Several disciples of the Storm Hall also looked at Ji Tianqing with expectant eyes. They wanted to see how he would prove his words. Ji Tianqing said with a solemn expression, "Of course there is evidence. The cultivation method I just mentioned was created by a martial arts sage 1,000 years ago. Furthermore, that martial sage used this method to become an almighty. He once set foot in the Tianshan region and left behind a martial arts legend. However, you may not have heard of the legend from 1,000 years ago. Furthermore, all of you are people with complete dantians, so you wouldn't pay attention to such legends. Plus, senior brother Yin, you all came from the Yong'an region. It's normal that you haven't heard of the legend in the Tianshan region." Hearing this, many people frowned in confusion, secretly wondering who the martial arts sage he was talking about was. Unfortunately, almost no one had heard of the legend from 1,000 years ago, let alone know who the Almighty was. Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and the other two were also confused. They couldn't tell if Ji Tianqing's words were true or false. Even Shi Jingsheng, Lu Mingyang, and the others were confused. They couldn't help but whisper to each other. The disciples of the two sects in the hall, as well as the outer disciples in the courtyard, were all skeptical of Ji Tianqing's words. No one could refute him, but no one truly believed or agreed with him. Yin Feiyang frowned and thought for a moment, but still shook his head. He said in a serious tone, "Junior brother Ji, although what you said seems to be true, it seems like it's true. However, you can't even say who that martial sage is. No one has heard of that legend. Therefore, your words are not trustworthy and cannot be used as evidence." Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently. The corner of his mouth hooked up into a sneer, but he didn't intend to explain. Of course, he knew who that martial sage was. He could also produce solid evidence. After all, he was the one whose dantian was destroyed. However, he didn't want to say Kenshin's name, and he wouldn't say that his dantian was destroyed in public. The disciples of both sides were in a stalemate. At this moment, a thin figure in a black robe walked into the hall from outside the door. "Feiyang, Donglai, what this disciple said is true. That legend is true. It's just that your knowledge is shallow and you haven't heard of that ancient legend. In fact, that ancient legend is only known by a very small number of experts. The person who came was Deacon Qi of the Tianjian sect." When Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and the other two saw him enter the hall, they immediately stood up and saluted him. Deacon Qi looked at Ji Tianqing with shining eyes and praised from the bottom of his heart, "Just now, when I heard this disciples' debate, it was truly wonderful and made one's heart surge. At such a young age, you have such extensive knowledge. Not only do you know the ancient legend from 1,000 years ago, but you can also say something that shocked the martial world. You are really amazing. In this martial arts exchange, our Tianjin sect admits defeat. Our disciples' knowledge and experience are indeed not as good as that of your sect's genius. Deacon Qi nodded slightly to Ji Tianqing and showed an encouraging smile. He said seriously, with your extraordinary knowledge and aptitude, you will definitely be at the top of the list of stars in the future. He then looked at Hang Chen and the other two and said with a dignified face, this martial arts exchange ends here. I hope you can broaden your horizons and gain something. Hang Chen, Fei Yang, let's go. After that, Deacon Qi led Hang Chen and the other two out of the hall and out of the Fengyun courtyard. Many of the outer disciples in the courtyard were still in shock and hadn't recovered yet. Even the disciples of the Fengyun courtyard in the hall were still thinking about Deacon Qi's words with a surprised expression on their faces. No one would have thought that the martial arts exchange would end up like this. Originally, the three disciples of the Tianjin sect had swaggered around and suppressed the disciples of the Fengyun courtyard to the point that they couldn't raise their heads and made a fool of themselves time and time again. But in the end, Ji Tianqing said a shocking martial arts speech. Not only did it shock Hang Chen and the other two, but it also made Deacon Qi of the Tianjin sect full of admiration and praise. This caused many disciples to be filled with astonishment, and their gazes toward Ji Tianqing became extremely complicated. Many disciples were full of admiration, envy, and curiosity for Ji Tianqing. After a long time, the hundreds of outer disciples in the courtyard dispersed. When they left the Fengyun courtyard, they were still discussing what had just happened in groups of 3 or 5. When the Fengyun courtyard quieted down, several disciples of the Fengyun courtyard calmed down and asked Ji Tianqing, how do you know about those legends and cultivation methods? Brother Ji, did you get some advice from an expert? Ji Tianqing looked at everyone's puzzled expression and couldn't help but reveal a smile. He calmly said, I saw it in the ancient history books. If you have nothing to do, you should read more books. It's good for you. Chapter 190. Manager Qi quickly left the Tempest courtyard with Hang Chen and the others. After returning to the Azure Pine courtyard, everyone entered a secret room. Clearly, they had something to discuss. Just now, Manager Qi had admitted defeat to Ji Tianqing in front of everyone in the Tempest courtyard. This made Hang Chen and the others somewhat unconvinced. As soon as they entered the secret room, Fei Yang asked, Sir Manager, you deliberately admitted defeat just now. Were you afraid that we would be in the limelight and suppress the Tempest courtyard, angering the Sky Pillar sect? Manager Qi shook his head and said with a grave expression, I didn't admit defeat on purpose. That brat Ji Tianqing has extraordinary experience and knowledge. He really isn't simple. Fei Yang slightly frowned and was silent for a moment before nodding in agreement. Sir Manager is right. I've secretly observed and investigated. Ji Tianqing should be the most outstanding among the 10 disciples of the Tempest courtyard. In the Dragon Mountain tournament in a few days, he will represent the Sky Pillar sect. Manager Qi slightly nodded and said in a cold tone, it seems that Ji Tianqing should be heavily nurtured by the Sky Pillar sect. In the future, he will most likely become an elite genius of the Sky Pillar sect. In this Dragon Mountain tournament, the 3 of you will keep a close eye on him. If there's a chance to cripple him, that would be even better. Otherwise, when he grows into a powerhouse in the future, he will be a stumbling block for our sect. Hang Chen grinned and revealed a cold smile. Hee, I already had this intention. Since Sir Manager has given the order, then I can rest assured. At this time, Ran Donglai asked again, Manager Qi, there are only 3 days left until the Dragon Mountain tournament. We've already discussed and figured out the details of the Tempest courtyard. Shouldn't we return? Manager Qi waved his hand and said in a deep voice, there's no hurry. We'll return when the 7-day deadline is up. My mission is not yet complete. I still need to hurry and investigate. In the past few days, I've already walked through the 9 peaks of the Sky Pillar sect and have a preliminary understanding of the 9 dragon spirit vein. No wonder the Sky Pillar sect can stand at the peak of the Tianshan region and prosper for thousands of years. The founding ancestor of the Sky Pillar sect used 9 mountains to set up a grand formation, forming a 9 dragon spirit vein. Not only did it gather the spirit chi of half of the ancient star realm, but it also accumulated boundless luck for the Sky Pillar sect. With such luck and countless resources, how can the Sky Pillar sect not be strong and prosperous? Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and the other 2 understood that if a sect wanted to flourish for a long time, then not only did it require the support and protection of experts, it also required great karmic luck and abundant resources. The most important thing was that the sect could continuously absorb new blood and have a large reserve of talents. Only then could the sect produce experts in large numbers and truly prosper. Although the Tianjian sect had been growing rapidly in recent years, the Tianjian sect had only been established for a few hundred years. Its foundation was far less profound than the Sky Pillar sects. Even the Tianjian sect was not as majestic and domineering as the Sky Pillar sect. The difference between the 2 sects wasn't just in the number of experts, but also in the number of genius disciples. Manager Qi frowned and said in a low voice, "The Sky Pillar sect's people have been secretly watching us. Every time I move during the day, there are experts secretly following me. I only have an opportunity at night. But no matter how well I hide my movements, the Sky Pillar sect still becomes suspicious. For the next few days, you will stay in the Pine Courtyard. Don't go out and show off. After I complete my mission, we will leave the Sky Pillar sect as soon as possible." Hang Chen and the other 2 didn't ask Manager Qi what he had been doing these past few days. They all knew that Manager Qi was carrying out the mission entrusted to him by the sect master and needed to keep it a secret. For the next 3 days, the Wind Cloud Courtyard was finally quiet. After the martial arts exchange ended, the 3 disciples of the Tianjian sect didn't come out again. Ji Tianxing, Lu Mingyang, and the others had been bitterly cultivating, silently increasing their strength. On the other hand, the White Dew Courtyard and the River Flow Courtyard were still bustling with noise and excitement. News of the martial arts exchange spread throughout the 2 courtyards, causing countless disciples to scramble over each other to discuss it. Ji Tianxing's shocking words widened the horizons of the 1,000+ outer court disciples, and they were all shocked by it. For a time, Ji Tianxing had become an influential figure in the outer sect. It could be said that everyone knew about him. Many disciples were curious about him and inquired about his deeds. As a result, Ji Tianxing had been punished to sweep the floor a few days after entering the sect. He had also been framed and locked up for half a month. This news quickly spread throughout the outer sect. Of course, the matter of him obtaining first place in both the alchemy and formation examinations also spread. His experience was so complicated, bizarre, and turbulent. Naturally, it attracted a lot of discussion. This caused the outer disciples to be even more interested in him, a genius who had been through a lot of misfortune, but was overflowing with talent. Soon, the news spread throughout the outer sect and even the inner sect disciples knew about it. There weren't many inner sect disciples, only 100 or so, but all of them were profound comprehending realm experts. Normally, inner sect disciples didn't pay much attention to outer sect matters. However, this was the first time that a Tianjian sect disciple had come to the Sky Pillar sect for an exchange, so it attracted the attention of the inner sect disciples. For 3 consecutive days, many inner sect disciples were also discussing Ji Tianxing. What everyone discussed the most was the words he had said in public. Some disciples even had their own opinions. In order to argue about this matter, they even went to the deacons and elders to verify the truth. In short, Ji Tianxing had become a hot topic in the Sky Pillar sect. 3 days passed quickly. That evening, the bell for assembly rang in the Wind Cloud Courtyard. Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation and hurried to the main hall. Soon, the 10 disciples were all present. Han Xiuxing walked into the main hall and announced with a solemn expression, "Everyone, today is the last day of the month. Tomorrow, the Dragon Mountain tournament will begin. Everyone, please make your preparations tonight. Tomorrow morning, I will bring everyone to Dragon Mountain to cheer for our sect. The 8 disciples who didn't need to participate in the tournament also revealed looks of anticipation. Han Xiuxing looked at Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang and asked in a deep voice, "You've been cultivating in seclusion for the past few days. The tournament will begin tomorrow. How are your preparations?" Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion for the past few days. He had been comprehending the 4th level of the Sword Heart Path and pondering about refining his acupoints. He had just reached the 1st level of the Profound Comprehending Realm, so it would be difficult for him to increase his strength in a short period of time. He nodded calmly and said, "Disciple is ready. Please don't worry, Deacon Han." Han Xiuxing looked at Lu Mingyang. Lu Mingyang immediately revealed a confident smile. "Deacon Han, disciple has already reached the peak of the 1st level of the Profound Comprehending Realm. Ever since I decided to participate in the Dragon Mountain tournament, I felt even more pressure and didn't dare to slack off. Fortunately, disciple has been cultivating in seclusion for the past few days and finally broke through to the 2nd level of the Profound Comprehending Realm." Chapter 191. Lu Mingyang's words made Han Xiaoxing reveal a gratified expression. Even though Lu Mingyang, who was at the 2nd level of the Mystic Enlightening stage, was still no match for Hang Chen. But if his strength increased by 1 level, it would at least increase his chances of winning. The other disciples also looked at Lu Mingyang with envy as they discussed in low voices. Senior brother Lu was at the 1st level of the Mystic Enlightening stage when he entered the sect. It's only been 2 months, and he's already at the 2nd level of the Mystic Enlightening stage. It's several times harder for a Mystic Enlightening stage martial artist to advance by 1 level than a true energy stage martial artist. It's unbelievable that he can advance by 1 level in 2 months. The genius Ji Tianqing has already given us a lot of pressure. I didn't expect Lu Mingyang to be so strong as well. We have to work hard." Lu Mingyang listened to everyone's discussion and felt even more proud. He turned to look at Ji Tianqing with a smug look in his eyes. He was looking forward to seeing Ji Tianqing's expression at this moment. Was it jealousy? Envy? Or vigilance? However, Ji Tianqing's expression was as calm as usual. There was no ripple in his eyes as though he was indifferent to this matter. Lu Mingyang was a little disappointed. He frowned and withdrew his smug look. Han Xiaoxing encouraged everyone with a few words before asking them to leave and gather here tomorrow morning. Everyone left the main hall and returned to their respective residences. After Ji Tianqing returned to his room, he continued to cultivate and try to refine his acupoints. Although Lu Mingyang had successfully broken through to the 2nd level of the Mystic Enlightening stage, it was useless. However, in his opinion, this was completely useless. Lu Mingyang was still no match for the disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect. Lu Mingyang could not even defeat Ran Donglai, who was at the 2nd level of the Mystic Enlightening stage, let alone Hang Chen and Yin Feiyang, who were at the 5th level of the Mystic Enlightening stage. Ji Tianqing's eyes were like torches. He had long seen that Ran Donglai had been at the 2nd level of the Mystic Enlightening stage for a long time and was about to break through to the 3rd level. Lu Mingyang was definitely unreliable if he wanted to win the Dragon Mountain tournament for the Sky Pillar sect and reclaim Dragon Mountain and honor. At that time, only he could complete such a heavy task. The next morning, a new day and a new month had begun. All the disciples were already prepared and hurried to the main hall. Han Xiuxing and Du Wu had arrived long ago, waiting for everyone in the main hall. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Han Xiuxing announced in a loud voice, "Today, the triennial Dragon Mountain Grand Tournament will be held. The time for our sect's honor has come. The Spirit Beast Hall has already prepared mounts for us. In a moment, I will lead everyone to Dragon Mountain. In addition, the 2 elders of our sect will also go to supervise the battle. I hope that the 2 participating disciples will fight for the honor of our sect." Han Xiaoxing only used 3 short sentences to stir up everyone's blood, causing their morale to soar. Subsequently, Han Xiaoxing and Du Wu led the group out of the wind cloud courtyard. Outside the gate, the disciples of the Spirit Beast Hall had brought over 12 chasing wind horses and were waiting quietly. Those wind-chasing horses were all mid-tier demonic beasts that were raised in the wild. They were bigger than ordinary horses, faster, and had more stamina. Han Xiaoxing and the others mounted the chasing wind horses and followed the mountain path out of Heaven Upholding Peak, galloping towards the north. Dragon Mountain was located 300 miles north of the Sky Upholding Sect, at the border between the Sky Upholding Sect and the Tianjian Sect. Of course, Dragon Mountain was closer to the Sky Upholding Sect, being more than 500 miles away from the Tianjian Sect. In the past, Dragon Mountain belonged to the Sky Upholding Sect. The Sky Upholding Sect had invested a lot of manpower to turn Dragon Mountain into a beautiful medicine garden. The scenery was very pleasant. It was a pity that the two sects had conflicts later on. They had no choice but to decide the ownership of Dragon Mountain in the form of an arena competition. Ji Tianxing and the other disciples had been discussing Dragon Mountain recently, but they had never seen it with their own eyes. On the way to Dragon Mountain, everyone was still imagining what Dragon Mountain, which had provoked the two sects to fight over it, would look like. The chasing wind horses were extremely fast. Facing the rising sun, they galloped between the mountains, as fast as an arrow leaving a bow. In less than 2 hours, everyone had arrived at the foot of Dragon Mountain. When everyone dismounted and stood on the grass, they immediately revealed complicated and strange expressions as they sized up Dragon Mountain from a close distance. The towering and majestic mountain range in front of them was over 3,000 meters high. It wasn't as green and lush as everyone had imagined. There were only a few scattered towering trees, a few useless jungles, and a lot of messy weeds on the mountain. Most of the places were covered with dark brown ground and rocks. Only a few places still had some seedlings of medicinal herbs. However, they looked half dead and didn't have any sense of vitality. At the foot of Dragon Mountain, there was a large river that meandered along the mountain. The river water in the big river was extremely turbid and filled with yellow silt. There were many places in the river that were blocked by huge mountain rocks. There were also a lot of dark brown ores and stone dregs scattered along the riverbank. Everyone could see that this was obviously the Tianjian sect's excessive mining of the ore veins in Dragon Mountain. Moreover, after the Tianjian sect mined the ore veins, in order to save manpower, they dumped the mountain rocks and dregs into the river at the foot of the mountain. Han Xiaoxing and Du Wu's expressions immediately became unsightly. Their eyes were filled with anger. Damn the Tianjian sect. They're a bunch of bastards and robbers. Back then, when our sect was managing Dragon Mountain, everything was in good order. We made Dragon Mountain a beautiful place with beautiful scenery. Yes, when we came to Dragon Mountain to supervise, there were towering trees everywhere. There were herb gardens full of flowers and plants. Even the air was fresh and sweet. The river at the foot of the mountain was as bright as a pearl belt. The river water was so clear that you could see the bottom. You could clearly see many fish swimming in it. In just 3 years, the Tianjian sect destroyed Dragon Mountain to such a miserable state. You can imagine how crazily they plundered Dragon Mountain's resources in these 3 years. When the disciples heard Han Xiaoxing and Du Wu's discussion and saw the miserable state of Dragon Mountain today, their faces were gloomy and their hearts were filled with anger. Lu Mingyang frowned and asked tentatively, "Deacon Han, Dragon Mountain was destroyed by the Tianjian sect. The resources must have been plundered. Does our sect still need to fight?" Hearing his words, Han Xiaoxing and Du Wu both frowned. After a moment of silence, Han Xiaoxing said in a deep voice, "Even if Dragon Mountain was destroyed to such a miserable state, you still have to do your best in today's competition. After all, this Dragon Mountain competition is not only to decide the ownership of Dragon Mountain, but also an opportunity for our sect to wash away the shame and regain our honor." Lu Mingyang nodded silently. He didn't say anything, but he was obviously disappointed in his heart. Everyone stopped at the foot of the mountain for a while. Then, under Han Xiaoxing's lead, they rushed to the top of the mountain. Every Dragon Mountain competition was held on the dragon viewing platform at the top of the mountain. Chapter 192. From the foot of the mountain to the summit, there was a small path paved with bluestone. Although the path was only 2 meters wide, it was clean and tidy, allowing everyone to pass through. However, this was the situation when the Sky Pillar sect was in charge of Dragon Mountain. When Han Xiusheng led everyone up the mountain, the path became bumpy and rugged. Not only was the bluestone path untended, but it was also overgrown with weeds and fallen leaves. In fact, there were many places that had collapsed or were blocked by mountain rocks. Han Xiusheng and Du Wu walked in front, looking at the miserable scene on Dragon Mountain. Their expressions became more and more gloomy. Not long after, everyone finally reached the summit. At the highest point of Dragon Mountain, there was a 100-meter wide platform made of marble. It was the dragon viewing platform. In the middle of the stone platform, there was a huge statue of the dragon god. The statue was the legendary dragon god. When the Sky Pillar sect was in charge of Dragon Mountain, the dragon viewing platform was always clean and tidy. It was surrounded by exotic flowers and spirit herbs, giving off a pleasant fragrance. But now, the dragon viewing platform was covered with mud and sand. The exotic flowers and spirit herbs had long been harvested. The entire dragon viewing platform looked desolate and dilapidated. If it weren't for the dozens of Tianjian sect flags and the dozens of Tianjian sect members standing on the platform, who would believe that this was the Dragon Mountain tournament? There were 12 people on the platform. 2 of them were old men wearing purple robes. They were the Tianjian sect's elders. The 3 middle-aged men wearing black robes were the Tianjian sect's deacons. Deacon Qi was also among them. The other 7 youths were the Tianjian sect's disciples. Apart from Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and Ran Donglai, who wore blue robes, the other 4 wore white robes. They were clearly inner sect disciples. Seeing Han Xiusheng and the others climb to the summit, the Tianjian sect's deacons cupped their fists and greeted them. Although the grudges between the 2 sects were difficult to resolve, they still had to act on the surface. Han Xiusheng and Du Wu suppressed their anger and expressionlessly cupped their fists in return. Then, they led the 10 disciples up the platform. The Tianjian sect's people stood on the north side of the dragon viewing platform, while the Sky Pillar sect's people stood on the south side. The 2 factions were separated by dozens of meters, sizing each other up. Hang Chen, Yin Feiyang, and Ran Donglai all had confident looks on their faces. There was even a mocking sneer on their faces. A few days ago, when they were at the Sky-bearing sect, they had purposely restrained their arrogance and pretended to be polite and well-mannered. However, this wasn't the Sky Pillar sect, but Dragon Mountain, the territory of the Tianjian sect. Hang Chen and the other 2 naturally did not need to disguise themselves. They all revealed their true arrogant faces. Their gazes when looking at Ji Tianqing and the others were also filled with contempt. Not long after, a fiery red bird as huge as a mountain flew over from the distant horizon. The fiery red bird flew to the peak of Dragon Mountain and landed below the dragon viewing platform. The 2 purple-robed men on the back of the bird leaped onto the dragon viewing platform. The 2 people who had come were the 2 elders of the Sky Pillar sect. The middle-aged man was an outer elder, Chu Huaishan. The other white-haired, purple-robed elder was the great elder, Mu Yunhai. Seeing the arrival of the 2 elders, Han Xiusheng and the others hurriedly bowed in salute. The elders, deacons, and disciples of the Tianjian sect also cupped their hands in salute. The 4 elders exchanged greetings as they stood in the middle of the dragon viewing platform and talked about today's Dragon Mountain tournament. Ji Tianqing silently listened to the 4 elders' conversation. Only then did he know the identities of the 2 Tianjian sect elders. One of them was an outer elder surnamed Tang, while the other was an elder of the discipline hall. At this time, the 4 elders finished talking about the tournament. Great Elder Mu Yunhai looked at the 2 Tianjian sect elders and asked with a solemn expression, "When our sect was in charge of Dragon Mountain, it was covered with herb gardens. The scenery was so beautiful. In just 3 short years, your noble sect has actually destroyed Dragon Mountain to such an extent. Do you want to destroy this precious land?" The two Tianjian sect elders had clearly expected that the Sky Pillar sect would make things difficult for them. The two had already prepared an explanation. The Discipline Hall elder immediately cupped his hands in salute to Mu Yunhai and said with a sigh, "Elder Mu, please calm down. Our sect also has its own difficulties. Our sect is not like your noble sect. Not only does it have 1,000 years of heritage, but it also controls the entire Tianshan region and has endless resources. Our sect's heritage is weak, and we have very few spirit veins and precious lands. The cultivation resources we produce every year are simply not enough to make ends meet. It is difficult to guarantee the daily necessities of our disciples. Therefore, in order to maintain the cultivation needs of our disciples, our sect can only do its best to extract resources. Please understand, Elder Mu." Elder Master Tang also added, "Of course, we did not wish for Dragon Mountain to become what it is today. If your noble sect dislikes Dragon Mountain, why not give it to our sect? This tournament will also end here. This way, the harmony between the two sects will not be damaged." Without waiting for him to finish, Lu Yunhai angrily shouted with a gloomy expression, "Impossible. You want our sect to hand over Dragon Mountain? Don't even think about it. Even if Dragon Mountain is destroyed, it is still a place with spirit veins and precious lands. After our sect takes over, it will only take 12 years to restore it." The Tianjian sect's elder Master Tang and the Discipline elder were not angry, but they both smiled disapprovingly. If Elder Mu thinks so, then I'm afraid you will be disappointed today. This old man has something to say. I hope Elder Mu does not mind. Your sect's disciples participating in the tournament are really weak. It will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to defeat our sect's 3 genius disciples." The two elders echoed each other, and their brows were filled with pride. Mu Yunhai and Chu Huaishan were so angry that their faces turned cold. Mu Yunhai frowned and said in a low voice, "This seat is too lazy to argue with you. Let the disciples fight in the arena." Then, Mu Yunhai waved his sleeves and turned to Han Xiusheng and the others. The Tianjian sect's discipline elder went back to the team as well. Only the outer elders of the two sects were left on the stage. Chu Huaishan and the Tianjian sect's elder Master Tang would be hosting the Dragon Mountain tournament together. Elder Master Tang was the first to speak. He said a lot of high-sounding words, explaining the origin and meaning of the Dragon Mountain tournament. After he finished, Chu Huaishan announced the rules in a loud voice. To put it simply, the tournament would be held in a best-of-3 format. No pets or external forces were allowed to be used during the matches. Apart from the fact that no one was allowed to kill the other, any kind of injury or disability could occur before one side admitted defeat. After Chu Huaishan announced the rules of the large competition, Hang Chen stared at Ji Tianqing with a mocking sneer in his eyes. Ji Tianqing had already guessed that Hang Chen was up to no good. He didn't think much of the strange look in Hang Chen's eyes. Anyways, from the moment he decided to participate in the Dragon Mountain tournament, he had thought about all the possible consequences. At the same time, Elder Master Tang announced in a loud voice, "The Dragon Mountain tournament has officially begun. Disciples of the two sects, please get ready to decide the participants for the first round." Chapter 193. Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang looked at each other. Neither of them was in a hurry to get on the stage. On the Tianjian sect side, the disciplinary elders, deacons, and disciples all smiled confidently. They seemed to have a card up their sleeves. Hang Chen and the other two didn't even need to discuss. They had already decided on the order of battle. When Elder Master Tang's voice fell, Ran Donglai, who had the lowest strength, took the lead and walked out of the crowd to the center of the dragon platform. Elder Master Tang immediately announced, "In the first round, the Tianjian sect's Ran Donglai will fight." Chu Huaishan turned his head to look at Ji Tianqing and Lu Mingyang, waiting for them to decide on the order of battle. Lu Mingyang saw that Ran Donglai was the first to appear. He immediately smiled and said to Ji Tianqing, "Let me go first." Then, without waiting for Ji Tianqing's agreement, he ran to the center of the dragon platform. Chu Huaishan immediately announced loudly, "In the first round, the Sky Pillar Sect's Lu Mingyang will fight." The first round of battle began. Chu Huaishan and Elder Master Tang retreated to the edge of the dragon platform and stared at the two people in the field. Ran Donglai stood calmly in the field with his sword on his back. He looked at Lu Mingyang with a smile and said, "Junior brother Lu, we meet again." Haha. Lu Mingyang squeezed out a smile. He didn't want to talk to Ran Donglai, so he quickly took out a silver ball. He held the silver ball in his palm and poured a majestic amount of true essence into it. Suddenly, the silver ball lit up with a dazzling silver light and turned into a set of shining silver armor, covering his whole body. This set of armor not only covered his body, but also a pair of combat boots and a helmet, completely covering his entire body. Even the eye area of the helmet was protected by a layer of silver wire. In the blink of an eye, Lu Mingyang turned into a silver armored giant. He was about 2 meters tall. Seeing this scene, the disciples of the Wind Cloud Academy didn't feel mighty at all. Instead, their expressions were a bit strange. As for the disciples of the Tianjian sect, they were already convulsing with laughter. Even the deacons and disciplinary elders could not help but chuckle to themselves. Ran Donglai couldn't help but laugh. He looked at Lu Mingyang playfully and teased, "Junior brother Lu, you are well prepared. When I saw you transform into an armored giant, I was scared witless. I was intimidated by your domineering aura and couldn't help but want to admit defeat." Ha 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 ha. Of course, Lu Mingyang knew that everyone was mocking him. But he endured the humiliation, holding a golden sword with both hands and staring coldly at Ran Donglai. "Senior brother Ran, fighting in the arena depends on strength, not on bickering. Bring it on. Let me see what you have to be so arrogant." Ran Donglai immediately retracted his smile and pulled out a black sword from his back. His fighting spirit soared, and a powerful aura burst out from his body. "Junior brother Lu, I won't stand on ceremony then. The 7 killing swordsmanship that I used on the square of your sect that day was just an entry-level move. Now, I will let you see the real 7 killing swordsmanship." Ran Donglai held his sword with both hands and rushed toward Lu Mingyang. His whole body was bursting with killing intent. First kill, broken bones. Ran Donglai rushed in front of Lu Mingyang and slashed down with his sword with a roar. The black sword burst out with a sword light that was nearly 2 meters long and broke out with a power that could split mountains and rivers. It slashed toward Lu Mingyang. Just in time. Lu Mingyang was not to be outdone. He shouted with high morale and slashed out 3 sword lights. The sword lights of both sides collided instantly and burst out with a muffled bang. 2 of the 3 sword lights that Lu Mingyang had slashed out were broken by Ran Donglai's sword. The remaining sword light also missed its target. Ran Donglai continued to charge and slashed his sword toward Lu Mingyang again. His murderous aura almost condensed into a wind. Third kill, heart execution. 3 powerful sword lights flashed with cold light and shrouded Lu Mingyang's figure on the spot. The powerful murderous aura and terrifying power made Lu Mingyang's eyes widen. His face was full of dread. Unfortunately, he was wearing a helmet and others could not see the change in his expression. At the critical moment, he retreated while brandishing his sword and slashing out sword lights all over the sky to resist with all his strength. Bang bang bang. The sword lights all over the sky collided violently and burst out with a muffled sound again. Lu Mingyang's sword lights were all slashed into pieces and splashed in all directions. Ran Donglai's murderous aura became more and more turbulent. He strode toward Lu Mingyang with an indomitable spirit and an unparalleled posture. Fourth kill, soul severing. The black sword once again slashed out 4 sword lights with terrifying power and shrouded Lu Mingyang's figure. Lu Mingyang was weaker than Ran Donglai in terms of momentum and fell into a disadvantage from the first exchange. He was shocked by Ran Donglai's violent murderous aura and did not dare to face Ran Donglai's fatal attack head-on. Seeing the 4 sword lights slashing toward him, he could only continue to retreat and slash out 18 sword lights to resist desperately. Bang bang bang, in a series of muffled sounds, Lu Mingyang's sword lights were all slashed and shattered. 3 of Ran Donglai's 4 sword lights were also shattered. And the 4th sword ray finally hit Lu Mingyang, ruthlessly slashing at his armor. Clang! In the deafening sound of metal clashing, Lu Mingyang was sent flying by the sword and fell to the ground 3 meters away. A deep indentation appeared on the left shoulder of the silver armor. It was clearly damaged. Fortunately, the armor blocked the sword, so Lu Mingyang was not injured. His face was pale with fright. Seeing Ran Donglai rushing over with murderous aura, he could not help but break out in cold sweat. Damn it! How can Ran Donglai be so powerful? Is this his real strength? At the same time, Ran Donglai rushed in front of him and once again slashed out 5 sword lights. 5th kill, earth-splitting. Lu Mingyang dodged again and waved his sword to resist. Bang 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 bang. Clang. After a series of muffled sounds, Lu Mingyang was once again sent flying by the sword and rolled 4 meters away. There was also a deep groove in the armor on his chest. Only now did he understand that Ran Donglai's 7-kill swordsmanship was a fierce and violent fighting sword technique. This sword technique used murderous aura to boost its power. It did not pay attention to fancy moves at all. It was to charge forward and destroy everything unstoppably. Moreover, the fiercer the charge, the stronger the murderous aura and sword intent, and the more powerful the sword technique. 6th kill, mountain splitting. Without waiting for Lu Mingyang to get up, Ran Donglai swung his sword again. Without a doubt, Lu Mingyang was unable to block it and was sent flying again. This time, there were 3 more grooves on his silver armor. It had already become tattered and deformed. Although this was a black level upper grade armor, Ran Donglai's sword was also a black level upper grade weapon. 7th kill, sky shattering. Ran Donglai roared again and finally used the strongest killing move of the 7-kill swordsmanship. Chapter 194. When Ran Donglai used the last move of the 7-kill swordsmanship, 7 dazzling sword lights shone like the sun. The murderous aura that burst out of his body condensed into a light red gust of wind that whistled and rushed toward Lu Mingyang. Lu Mingyang had long lost his will to fight. When he saw the 7 sword lights and Ran Donglai's blood-red murderous aura, he was immediately scared out of his wits. He had no doubt that as long as Ran Donglai's ultimate move hit him, he would die without a doubt. He might even be beheaded. In this situation, Lu Mingyang could no longer care about his previous plan, let alone the ownership of Dragon Mountain and the honor of his sect. Without hesitation, he held his sword horizontally and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Stop! I admit defeat." When his loud voice spread throughout the dragon viewing platform, Ran Donglai's 7 sword lights were about to hit him. At this critical moment, Ran Donglai couldn't hold back his sword. The 7-kill swordsmanship was too fierce and violent. It focused on advancing murderous aura. However, Ran Donglai's cultivation was still shallow. He hadn't cultivated the 7-kill swordsmanship to the realm of Desheng, so he couldn't control it at will. Seeing that Lu Mingyang had admitted defeat in front of everyone and was about to be killed by Ran Donglai on the spot. At this critical moment, Chu Huaishan frowned and waved his hand, shooting out 2 dark green true essence splendors. Swoosh! One of the 2 dark green true essences turned into a shield to protect Lu Mingyang, and the other turned into a green light wall to block Ran Donglai. Bang! With a muffled sound, the 7 dazzling sword lights hit the green light wall and were all blocked. The first battle was over. Ran Donglai also calmed down and the blood-red murderous aura around him finally dissipated. He put his sword back into the scabbard and looked at the embarrassed Lu Mingyang with a smile. He saluted with his hands folded and said, "Junior brother Lu, thank you for letting me win." Although he didn't say much, he looked down at Lu Mingyang with a contemptuous look that was like a sharp blade that deeply stabbed Lu Mingyang's heart. Lu Mingyang's heart was filled with grief and indignation, but there was nothing he could do. He could only grit his teeth and endure. He snorted coldly. He didn't want Ran Donglai to speak, and he didn't want to see Ran Donglai's smug look. The silver armor was already tattered and distorted, so he took it off and put it away. With a gloomy expression, he returned to the Sky Pillar sex group. Deacon Han, Elder Chu, this disciple has disappointed you. He endured the humiliation and bowed to Han Xiaoxing and Chu Huaishan. Chu Huaishan frowned slightly. His expression did not look good, but he did not say anything. Han Xiaoxing sighed helplessly and nodded. You've done your best. Don't blame yourself too much. In fact, everyone could see that Lu Mingyang had fallen into a disadvantageous position from the beginning, and the outcome was already decided. After all, he had just advanced to the second level of the mystic comprehending stage, while Ran Donglai had already reached the peak of the second level and was about to step into the third level. The first match of the Dragon Mountain tournament ended in a hurry. The Sky Pillar sect had a bad start and lost the first match. This caused the elders, deacons, and several disciples to be shrouded in a layer of haze. They were faintly disappointed and helpless. In everyone's opinion, since Lu Mingyang, who was at the second level of the mystic comprehending stage, had been defeated, it was impossible for Ji Tianqing, who was at the first level of the mystic comprehending stage, to create any miracles. It seemed that the Sky Pillar sect would lose for sure in this Dragon Mountain tournament, and they would not be able to take back Dragon Mountain. The Tianjian sect's people also had the same thought. The two elders, deacons, and disciples all revealed smug smiles. In particular, the inner sect disciples were discussing with complacent expressions as they pointed at the Sky Pillar sect's disciples. Their expressions were full of contempt and disdain. At this moment, Elder Master Tang walked to the center of the dragon viewing platform and announced the results of the matches. The Tianjian sect wins the first match. Next, please prepare for the second match. As Elder Master Tang finished speaking, Ran Donglai returned to the group with a smug look on his face. Yin Feiyang walked out from the crowd and stood in the middle of the field with a smile. He looked calm and confident. Elder Master Tang announced loudly, the second match, the Tianjian sect's Yin Feiyang, will fight. As his voice fell, everyone looked at Ji Tianqing. The Sky Pillar sect only had 2 disciples participating. Lu Mingyang had already been defeated and was not qualified to fight again. Now, only Ji Tianqing was left to fight. Ji Tianqing expressionlessly walked out of the crowd and was about to walk to the center of the field. Chu Huaishan looked at him and solemnly exhorted, Ji Tianqing, you have to win this match no matter what. Even if our sect loses in the end, at least don't lose too badly. The large tournament was a best-of-3 match system. If Ji Tianqing lost one more match, the large tournament would immediately end. If the Sky Pillar sect lost both matches, they would become the laughingstock of the Tianshan region. Ji Tianqing didn't say anything. He only nodded to Chu Huaishan and then walked to the center of the field. He stood tall and straight in the middle of the field, his left hand holding the black dragon sword and his right hand behind his back. His entire body exuded a calm and composed aura. Yin Feiyang looked at him with a playful expression, the corners of his mouth curling into a smile. Junior apprentice brother Ji, when we were in your sect, I experienced your debating talent. I really admire it. Now that you and I are going to fight, I'm looking forward to seeing if your martial strength is as strong as your debating talent. The people of the Tempest Hall were familiar with Ji Tianqing. They all knew that he was a steady and calm person. He wasn't good at debating and didn't have any eloquence. Yin Feiyang's words were clearly mocking Ji Tianqing's sharp tongue, saying that he only knew how to brag and didn't have any real strength. Ji Tianqing didn't bother to bicker with him. He said expressionlessly, you'll soon experience my strength. Yin Feiyang did not manage to take advantage of Ji Tianqing, nor did he manage to infuriate Ji Tianqing. He sneered again and said, haha, even now, junior brother Ji is still holding on. You're not simple. Since junior apprentice brother Ji is so confident, I'll let you have 2 moves first. Otherwise, you won't even have the chance to draw your sword. Yin Feiyang's words spread throughout the dragon viewing platform, causing an uproar. The disciples and deacons of the Tianjin sect all revealed disdainful sneers. They took pleasure in Ji Tianqing's misfortune, waiting to see him make a fool of himself. In their opinion, with Yin Feiyang's strength at the third stage of profound enlightenment, defeating Ji Tianqing, who was at the first stage of profound enlightenment, was as easy as blowing off dust. The people of the Sky Pillar sect were so angry that their faces turned cold. They inwardly cursed Yin Feiyang for being too arrogant and condescending. Even Han Xiaoxing and Chu Huaishan were enraged. They felt that the Sky Sword sect's people were too arrogant. They were too arrogant. Ji Tianqing was still expressionless. He looked at Yin Feiyang indifferently and said calmly, "Since senior apprentice brother Yin is so confident, then I won't be polite." Originally, he wanted to give Yin Feiyang an eye for an eye. He'd said in public that he'd let Yin Feiyang have 3 moves to counterattack and anger him. But after thinking about it, he immediately changed his mind. Wouldn't it be even more humiliating to defeat an arrogant opponent with 1 move? Chapter 195. Junior Brother Ji, bring it on. Yin Feiyang sneered disdainfully. He stood calmly in the field without any intention of drawing his sword. He said that he would let Ji Tianqing make 2 moves, so he would only block and dodge. He would not take the initiative to attack. "Take this!" Ji Tianqing shouted in a low voice. A cold light flashed in his eyes. At the same time, he used the shadowless step. His feet moved in a mysterious way, and he rushed toward Yin Feiyang as fast as lightning. He was so fast that he left a few afterimages behind him. In a flash, he rushed 10 meters away and arrived in front of Yin Feiyang. He pulled out the black dragon sword and slashed with all his strength. Dragon soars from the 9th heaven. When the black dragon sword was unsheathed, it shone with a dazzling cold light. It was as if a thunderbolt had torn the night apart. When Ji Tianqing poured his majestic true essence into the black dragon sword, it immediately turned into a huge 3-meter-long sword light. The sword light burst out with a power that could split heaven and earth. It fell from the sky and slashed toward Yin Feiyang. The dazzling sword light condensed into a 9-meter-long black dragon shadow. It emitted a bone-chilling cold. The entire dragon viewing platform was shocked by the power of this sword and trembled slightly. With Ji Tianqing as the center, the air within a radius of 20 meters was squeezed out, making crackling sounds. The power of this sword was so terrifying that the disciples of the 2 sects were shocked and exclaimed in disbelief. Before the black dragon sword hit Yin Feiyang, he was suppressed by the terrifying sword intent. He could not move an inch. His eyes were full of horror and despair. He instantly forgot what he had just said and subconsciously held the hilt of his sword. He wanted to pull it out and fight back. However, it was too late. Bang! In a deafening sound, the 3-meter-long sword light and the 9-meter-long black dragon shadow drowned Yin Feiyang on the spot. The huge sword light slashed the dragon viewing platform and cut a huge gully in the ground. Countless gravel splashed out. The entire dragon viewing platform trembled violently as if there was a big earthquake. Such astonishing destructive power caused everyone to reveal expressions of disbelief. The people of the Tianjin sect were even more worried. They stared at the chaotic scene in the field, guessing what would happen to Yin Feiyang. After a full 10 breaths of time, the true essence brilliance and the black dragon phantom dissipated, and the dust and gravel that filled the air also settled down. Only then did everyone see the situation clearly. Ji Tianqing held the black dragon sword in his hand and stood proudly in the middle of the field, exuding a confident and calm aura. On the stone floor in front of him, there was a huge crack about 1/2 meter wide and 5 meters long. Yin Feiyang was lying at the side of the rift. His body was trembling, his face was covered in blood, and his hair was disheveled. He was in an extremely sorry state. He was obviously heavily injured, and he struggled with all his might to get up, but he was unable to do so. Ji Tian Xing, you deserve to die. This is impossible. Yin Feiyang raised his head with great difficulty. He raised his blood-stained face and glared at Ji Tianqing with bloodshot eyes. His voice was hoarse, and his words were intermittent. When he opened his mouth to speak, blood kept flowing out of the corners of his mouth. Obviously, his injuries were not only external, but also his internal organs. Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, "Senior brother Yin, you clearly said that you would let me make 2 moves first, so that I wouldn't even have a chance to draw my sword. This is only the first move. Please keep your word and take my second move." As he spoke, he raised the black dragon sword again. His fighting spirit soared, and he was about to use his second move. Yin Feiyang was suddenly filled with fear, and he felt extremely indignant and humiliated. Just a moment ago, he had been full of pride and disdain for Ji Tianqing, and he had said arrogant words in front of everyone. But now, he had been seriously injured by Ji Tianqing's sword. He didn't even have a chance to draw his sword and counterattack. He had almost died on the spot. How ironic and ridiculous this was. With his current heavily injured body, how could he possibly withstand Ji Tianqing's second attack? Wasn't it obvious that he wanted to kill him? In his grief and indignation, Yin Feiyang actually opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Ji Tianqing turned a blind eye to this. He raised the black dragon sword and looked like he was about to slash down. At the critical moment, Manager Qi of the Tianjian sect quickly jumped out and rushed to Yin Feiyang's side. He glared at Ji Tianqing and shouted in a deep voice, "Ji Tianqing, what are you doing? Are you going to kill someone in front of everyone?" Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and deliberately mocked him. Yin Feiyang said that he would let me make 2 moves first. What, Manager Qi, are you going to interfere with the competition? Or, Manager Qi, are you going to help Yin Feiyang renege on his debt and be a villain who goes back on his word? Manager Qi's face turned ashen with anger, and his eyes were filled with cold light. However, the deacons and elders of both sects were present, so he could only endure and not flare up. He gnashed his teeth and shouted coldly, "We admit defeat in this round." Only then did Ji Tianqing put away his black dragon sword. He glanced at Deacon Qi with a mocking gaze and said disdainfully, "Wouldn't it have been better if you had admitted defeat earlier? Why wait until you've been beaten to a pulp before surrendering? You!" Manager Qi was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. If it were another occasion, he would definitely kill Ji Tianqing. However, on the dragon viewing platform, under the watchful eyes of everyone, no matter how much Ji Tianqing humiliated him and Yin Feiyang, he could only endure it. Soon, Manager Qi supported the heavily injured Yin Feiyang and left the stage dejectedly. The faces of the Tianjian sect's people darkened. They glared at Ji Tianqing with hatred and gnashed their teeth. The disciples of the Sky Pillar sect were filled with shock. They revealed excited smiles and shouted while waving their fists. "Great! We've won! Ji Tianqing, well done! As expected of the influential figure of our sect. That sword move was too gorgeous and terrifying. Ha ha ha! Clowns of the Tianjian sect, why don't you continue to be arrogant?" The first elder, Chu Huaishan, Han Xiusheng, and the others obviously did not expect this result. They all revealed gratified smiles. "Not bad, not bad. Huh, what a good move, dragon soars from the 9th heaven. It really has the momentum of a dragon soaring through the 9th heaven. I didn't misjudge him. This battle alone is enough to make him famous in the ancient realm of the stars. This kid is only at the first stage of the profound comprehending realm, but he can display such terrifying combat strength. It's really incredible. Previously, I thought that the Tianjian sect had no chance of winning with Hang Chen, who was at the 5th stage of the profound comprehending realm. Now it seems that Ji Tianqing may be able to create a miracle." Ji Tianqing listened to the discussions and praises of the crowd, but he was not arrogant or complacent. His expression was still calm and composed. Although he could defeat Yin Feiyang with his own strength without using the black dragon sword, he would not be able to achieve such a shocking effect. The little black dragon had lived in the Grand Peace Palace for a month and eaten many spiritual fruits. It had recovered 20% of its strength, which made the black dragon's sword so powerful. It was also because of this that Ji Tianqing had not chosen a weapon and had only chosen a set of soft armor. How could the profound grade treasured swords in the outer sect's treasury compare to the black dragon's sword's power? Chapter 196. On the dragon viewing platform, the crowd discussed for a long time. The people of the Tianjian sect were filled with anger and resentment. They glared at Ji Tianqing with murderous intent. The people of the Sky Pillar sect were jubilant. They were proud of Ji Tianqing's easy victory. After a while, Chu Huaishan announced the result of the fight. The Sky Pillar sect wins the second round. Next, both parties, please prepare for the third battle. The third battle was not only the final battle, but also the crucial battle that would determine the outcome of the competition. At the same time, it was also a battle between the strongest outer sect disciples of the two sects. Ji Tianqing was still standing in the field, waiting for the third round. Among the people of the Tianjian sect, Hang Chen walked out with the heavy sword of the setting sun on his back. He looked cold and murderous. Previously, he had disdained Ji Tianqing and didn't put him in his eyes at all. However, after witnessing Ji Tianqing's sword, he no longer underestimated Ji Tianqing and began to view him as a mortal enemy. Bang, 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 Hang Chen walked to the center of the field, neither too fast nor too slow. His heavy footsteps made muffled sounds. He stopped 10 meters away from Ji Tianqing. He stared at Ji Tianqing maliciously and spoke. Junior brother Ji, I didn't expect you to hide your strength so well. To be able to use such amazing swordsmanship. However, no matter how powerful your swordsmanship is, you're only at LV1 of the Tongxian realm. You're no match for me. Since you've met me, you're destined to lose miserably. I'll give you a chance. It's not too late to admit defeat. Otherwise, don't blame my heavy sword of the setting sun for being merciless. Hang Chen's tone was firm, and his eyes were full of confidence. As a martial arts genius, he naturally had the confidence and pride to match. Even though Ji Tianqing had just displayed amazing combat strength, he had only stopped looking down on him and treated him seriously. He was certain that the final result would not change. The victory would belong to him. ALV1 of the Tongxian realm martial artist wanted to defeat a LV5 of the Tongxian realm expert. This was simply the ravings of a lunatic, an absurd delusion. Ji Tianqing looked at Hang Chen calmly and said in an indifferent tone, I always believe that everything depends on human effort. Nothing is predestined, and nothing is impossible. Hang Chen, I will definitely win this battle, and Long Shan will definitely return to our sect. Hang Chen was very arrogant. Ji Tianqing was also very confident. His tone was also resolute and unquestionable. Hearing his words, Hang Chen immediately frowned. He reached for the heavy sword of the setting sun on his back and grinned coldly. Junior brother Ji, since you're so confident, it seems that you've already made preparations. If that's the case, then put on the armor you've carefully prepared. Let's see if I can chop you into pieces. Hang Chen gripped the heavy sword of the setting sun with both hands as his entire body emitted a bloody killing intent. His skin became even redder, and his expression became even more ferocious. The blood in his body surged violently, emitting the sound of wind and thunder. It was obvious that he was accumulating terrifying power. There was no doubt that he had stimulated the potential of the battle sword bloodline. He had also begun to go berserk, and his combat strength was rapidly increasing. Seeing this scene, the people of the Tianjian sect secretly clenched their fists, looking forward to the scene of Hang Chen tyrannizing Ji Tianqing. A few disciples also shouted excitedly, cheering for Hang Chen. Hang Chen, release your killing intent. Let the trash of the Sky Pillar sect experience the power of the battle sword bloodline. Hang Chen will win. Our sect will win. When the people of the Sky Pillar sect saw the changes in Hang Chen's body and aura, their expressions became grave. A few disciples widened their eyes and stared at Hang Chen, their faces filled with worry. Han Xiusheng, Chu Huaishan, and the others also frowned, their hearts filled with worry. In their opinion, Hang Chen's strength was already at the 5th level of the mystic enlightening realm. Now that he had used the power of the battle sword bloodline, his combat strength was close to the 6th level of the mystic enlightening realm. No matter how monstrous Ji Tianqing was, it was impossible for him to surpass 5 levels and defeat Hang Chen. It was no longer a miracle, it was a complete fantasy. At the same time, Hang Chen's aura reached its peak, and his body was surrounded by a layer of light red killing intent. His eyes also turned dark red as he stared at Ji Tianqing and shouted angrily, "Ji Tianqing, die! Battle blood manic sword! Cloud crushing slash!" Hang Chen held the sword of the setting sun with both hands, his whole body emitting blood-red killing intent. He rushed toward Ji Tianqing like a flood, brandishing the sword and slashing out 2 blood-red sword rays. Swoosh! Swoosh! The 2-meter-long sword rays were as wide as half a table. They were blood-red in color and emitted a strong bloody aura. They were extremely violent. The 2 sword rays slashed toward Ji Tianqing from the left and right at an incredible speed, leaving afterimages of the sword rays in the sky. Seeing this scene, the disciples of the Tianjian sect were all excited and exclaimed excitedly, "It's the battle blood manic sword! Hang Chen is actually using his secret sword technique." Hang Chen didn't use the 7-killing swordsmanship, but directly used his secret sword technique. It seems that he wants to end the battle in a few moves. I bet that Ji Tianqing won't be able to last more than 3 moves under Hang Chen's sword. Ha ha ha, Ji Tianqing must have been shocked by Hang Chen's killing intent. He must have been scared silly. When the disciples of the Tianjian sect saw Ji Tianqing standing in the field expressionlessly, they all thought that he had been scared silly. Then, an even more unbelievable scene occurred. Facing Hang Chen's fierce attack, Ji Tianqing didn't wave his sword to block it. Instead, he put away the black dragon sword. He was facing Hang Chen's attack with his bare hands. Seeing this, the people of the Sky Pillar sect were all surprised and discussed with puzzlement. What is Ji Tianqing doing? Is he going to fight Hang Chen with his bare hands? Isn't this too ridiculous? Not to mention that he's only at the 1st level of the Mystic Comprehending Realm. Even if he's also at the 5th level of the Mystic Comprehending Realm, it's impossible for him to block Hang Chen. Ji Tianqing was able to defeat Yin Feiyang with 1 move. In addition to his own strength, his sword is also very powerful. It's obviously not an ordinary sword. Yeah. I really don't know what he's thinking. He actually abandoned his divine weapon and wants to face the enemy with his bare hands. When the disciples of the Tianjian sect saw Ji Tianqing put away his sword, they were all stunned for a moment. Obviously, they hadn't expected this. Then, several disciples came back to their senses and revealed expressions of contempt and disdain as they laughed unscrupulously. Ha ha ha, is this guy's brain flooded with water? He's going to face Hang Chen with his bare hands? This isn't confidence. It's completely throwing an egg against a stone. He's courting death. Hee, it's also possible that Ji Tianqing knows that he's no match for Hang Chen and will definitely lose, so he simply gave up resisting. When I saw him defeat Yin Feiyang with 1 move, I thought he had some ability and would be able to withstand a few moves from Hang Chen. Now it seems that the outcome has been decided. Longshan still belongs to our Tianjian sect. Chapter 197. In fact, Hang Chen's attack couldn't threaten Ji Tianqing at all, so he didn't need to dodge. When the 2 blood-red sword radiances were about to hit Ji Tianqing, he finally counterattacked. He activated the power of the sword embryo in his body and instantly released 8 golden sword radiances. They circled around him rapidly and formed a sword net. Swish! 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 The sword radiances flew back and forth like shooting stars, making sharp sounds and bursting with sharp sword chi. The 2 blood-red sword radiances were blocked by the sword net and shattered on the spot. Hang Chen was stunned when he saw this. His eyes were filled with surprise and confusion. The disciples of the two sects were also stunned. They didn't expect Ji Tianqing to be able to perform such an exquisite sword technique without using a sword. In the next moment, the 8 golden sword radiances split into 16 sword radiances under Ji Tianqing's control and stabbed toward Hang Chen. The 16 sword radiances attacked in unison and arranged themselves into a fan-shaped sword formation, bursting with sharp sword qi. With Hang Chen as the center, the sword radiances covered an area of 10 meters. The sword qi was everywhere. Hang Chen immediately came to his senses and hurriedly waved the crescent sun sword. He performed the sword technique of the blazing blood sword and slashed out several sword radiances to attack the golden sword formation. The blood-red sword radiances and the golden sword radiances collided, producing muffled bangs and bursting with violent qi that formed gusts of wind. The sword formation formed by the 16 sword radiances was swayed by Hang Chen's violent attacks, and the sword radiances danced wildly. However, Ji Tianqing calmly performed the sword technique and split the 16 sword radiances into 32 sword radiances. Swish! Swish! The 32 sword radiances surrounded Hang Chen and covered an area of 10 meters. They kept attacking and stabbing. This area became the domain of the sword radiances. The raging qi and sword radiances seemed to be tearing the sky apart. Hang Chen was surrounded by so many sword radiances that his body was completely covered by them. He desperately waved his heavy sword, trying to block and break the sword radiances around him. However, the 32 sword lights were as swift as lightning, and their order and trajectory contained some sort of special law that was difficult to fathom. He furiously brandished his sword and madly attacked dozens of times, but he still couldn't break through the encirclement of the sword rays that filled the sky. It was to the extent that he was trapped on the spot, unable to move at all. He had been circling in a radius of 5 steps. Seeing this scene, the people of the two sects revealed expressions of surprise and astonishment, and began to discuss one after another. What kind of move is this? Ji Tianqing can actually display such exquisite swordsmanship. No wonder he didn't use a treasured sword to face the enemy. It turns out that he had grasped such an unimaginable sword technique. It's really too gorgeous, too shocking. Does anyone feel that there seems to be a special pattern to the attack routes and sequences of the golden sword auras, like the power of an array? It can't be. Could it be that Ji Tianqing had combined array and swordsmanship? Isn't this too unbelievable? Hang Chen is attacking left and right, but he can't break through the sword light's encirclement. It looks like there's something strange about those sword lights. Everyone was discussing with surprise and shock. The people of the Sky Pillar sect were all amazed and secretly cheered for Ji Tianqing. The disciples of the Tianjian sect were also awed by Ji Tianqing's exquisite swordsmanship. They put away their contempt and didn't dare to mock him again. In the field, the golden sword auras that filled the sky still surrounded Hang Chen, forcing him into a fluster. Bang! 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 The muffled sounds were incessant, and the raging wind continued to sweep in all directions. Ji Tianqing controlled the sword array from 10 meters away and continued to attack Hang Chen. Hang Chen desperately attacked in the sword array, but he couldn't break through the encirclement of the sword array. He couldn't even touch the corner of Ji Tianqing's clothes. His patience had finally run out, and the discussions of the people around him made him feel ashamed and angry. Ji Tianqing. You want to trap me with these insignificant skills? Don't even think about it. Hang Chen roared with a ferocious expression. His skin turned dark red like blood, and a blood-red murderous aura lingered around him. The dense murderous aura condensed into a red cloud. I'll let you see the power of my sword-fighting bloodline. Obviously, the furious Hang Chen no longer held back his strength and completely activated the power of his sword-fighting bloodline. At this moment, his combat strength was raised to the peak and was comparable to a LV6 Tongxian realm expert. Sky-splitting strike. Hang Chen roared and rushed toward Ji Tianqing with the sword of setting sun in both hands. He fiercely slashed out a blood-red sword light that could split heaven and earth. He completely ignored the sword lights around him and rushed out of the sword array's encirclement at the risk of injury. Bang! 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 Suddenly, a series of deafening muffled sounds burst out. Hang Chen broke through the encirclement of the sword lights with an overbearing attitude and extremely powerful destructive power and arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. However, he was also stabbed by many sword lights. Several deep sword wounds were left on his body, and dark red blood gushed out. Although he had broken through the sword array with absolute strength and domineering methods, he was also heavily injured. However, his body was also heavily injured, and his strength was weakened by 30%. When he rushed in front of Ji Tianqing was already prepared and had already used the shadowless step to retreat. Ji Tianqing! Give me your life! Hang Chen roared furiously. He waved the sword of setting sun and pounced on Su Mo, launching a frenzied attack. Ji Tianqing did not meet him head-on at all. He dodged and evaded the attacks while controlling the sword lights to tangle with Hang Chen. The people from the two sects watched the battle closely, their faces full of worry. The people from the Tianjian sect originally thought that with Hang Chen's strength, he could defeat Ji Tianqing in 3 to 5 moves. However, they did not expect that a full 15 minutes had passed, and the outcome of this battle was still undecided. Everyone found this hard to believe, and they couldn't accept it. On the other side, the people from the Sky Pillar sect were also shocked and found it unbelievable. Before today, no one believed that Ji Tianqing, who was in the first stage of the Profound Enlightening Realm, could match Hang Chen, who was in the 5th stage of the Profound Enlightening Realm. But now, Ji Tianqing had done it. Even if he had not defeated Hang Chen, the fact that he could fight evenly with Hang Chen was already a miracle. The disciples of the Tempest Hall were all staring at Ji Tianqing with admiration. They were dazzled and intoxicated as they watched the battle. The First Elder and Chu Huaishan were also silently watching Ji Tianqing. Both of them were experts at the peak of the Origin Core stage. Of course, they could see Ji Tianqing's methods and intentions. The two of them stood at the edge of the dragon viewing platform and were talking through their spiritual senses. The First Elder praised from the bottom of his heart, Elder Chu, this Ji Tianqing is not simple. He knows that he is not as strong as Hang Chen, so he won't fight him head-on. He knows how to make use of his advantages. This kid is proficient in formations. He actually combined formations with swordsmanship to display an exquisite sword formation. In order to break the sword formation, Hang Chen could only use brute force to break it. As a result, he was seriously injured and his strength was weakened by 30%. Chu Huaishan also nodded and said, yes, Ji Tianqing's attainments in formations are not bad. Knowing that Hang Chen's talent in formations is not good, he used a sword formation to deal with Hang Chen. This is using his strength to attack Hang Chen's weakness. This kid can still be so calm and composed in a fierce battle. He knows how to play to his strengths and avoid his weaknesses. He first weakened Hang Chen's strength. He is really calm and wise. The First Elder smiled and said with a gratified face, originally, with Ji Tianqing's strength in the first stage of the Profound Enlightening Realm, I did not have high hopes of winning against Hang Chen, who is in the 5th stage of the Profound Enlightening Realm. I did not expect that although Ji Tianqing is weaker than Hang Chen, he is brave and resourceful. He knows how to gradually weaken Hang Chen's strength. Although Hang Chen's strength is not bad, he is a brute. Now that he only has 70% of his strength left, Ji Tianqing has a chance of winning. At present, it seems that Ji Tianqing is likely to defeat Hang Chen today and create a miracle. Chapter 198. Just as the crowd was discussing, there was a change in the battle situation. Within 100 breaths, Hang Chen chased after Ji Tianqing and attacked him crazily. He had already made more than 100 moves. He relied on the strength of a LV5 Tongxian realm martial artist, the violent power of the fighting sword bloodline, and the power of the blazing sun sword to fight Ji Tianqing at close range. Ji Tianqing was not as strong as Hang Chen, and he was unarmed. Of course, he could not fight Hang Chen at close range, let alone face him head-on. He used the shadowless steps to dodge and controlled the sword radiance to block and counterattack. However, he was only a LV1 Tongxian realm martial artist, so he was not Hang Chen's match. It was difficult for him to distance himself from Hang Chen. After exchanging more than 100 moves with Hang Chen, he also suffered serious injuries. There were several hideous wounds on his body, and blood was gushing out from them. However, he was wearing the black class high Golden Sun soft armor, so his injuries were not serious. By now, Ji Tianqing and Hang Chen had both used up a lot of genuine vitality. Both of them were covered in blood and their hair was disheveled. They looked a little embarrassed. Hang Chen originally thought that he could easily crush Ji Tianqing, but now that he had ferociously attacked over 100 times, he was still unable to defeat Ji Tianqing. His heart was filled with anger and anxiety, and he became more furious. He had the fighting sword bloodline and was a LV5 Tongxian realm martial artist. It was a disgrace that he was forced into such a state by Ji Tianqing, who was only a LV1 Tongxian realm martial artist. Hang Chen gradually lost his patience. He only wanted to defeat Ji Tianqing as soon as possible. However, he was eager to win. Although the power of his sword technique increased, he neglected his own defense and exposed many flaws. Ji Tianqing finally seized the opportunity and retreated 10 meters to distance himself from Hang Chen. Thousand Feather Blade. He shouted in a low voice and performed the Flying Star sword technique without hesitation. He activated the power of the sword embryo in his body and released 9 1-meter-long dark golden sword radiances that stabbed toward Hang Chen. Swish. 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 The 9 sword radiances enveloped Hang Chen and attacked him from different angles and directions. In the short span of a breath, the 9 sword beams had actually stabbed nearly 200 times. Hang Chen was enveloped by the sword shadows that filled the sky, and he immediately revealed a horrified expression. He swung the setting sun heavy sword with all his might, creating a sky full of blood-red sword light to block the sword light. Ding ding ding. Amidst the crisp sounds of collisions, the golden and blood-red sword beams continued to collide, bursting forth with a violent and raging strength chi. Even though Hang Chen tried his best to block it, his sword was too slow, and he couldn't block the lightning-fast sword light. In just 5 breaths of time, the 9 streaks of sword light had stabbed over 1,000 times before finally dissipating. On the other hand, Hang Chen had already become a bloody figure. His entire body was covered in over a dozen crisscrossing sword wounds, and dark red blood ceaselessly gushed out from them. The green robe he wore had long been shredded into pieces, turning into a pile of rags scattered on the dragon viewing platform. Fortunately, he was wearing a red soft armor that protected his vital parts, so he didn't embarrass himself in front of everyone. Even so, his blood-stained appearance made him look extremely miserable, causing the disciples of the 2 sects to cry out in alarm. After being seriously injured, Hang Chen's strength fell again, and he only had 40% of his combat strength left. At this moment, his strength was only equivalent to the 4th level of the mystic comprehending realm. Ah. The pain from the wounds all over his body and the anger that filled his heart made Hang Chen roar at the sky in rage. Ji Tianqing! You damned bastard! I'm going to tear you into pieces. Hang Chen roared as he charged at Ji Tianqing. He swung the setting sun heavy sword and slashed out over a dozen blood-red sword light that could split the sky and earth. Suddenly, an extremely dense bloody aura spread out, causing the entire dragon viewing platform to be covered in a bloody wind and rain. It was shrouded in a blood-red murderous aura. Ji Tianqing sneered when he saw that Hang Chen's strength had plummeted and that he was about to go crazy. After being ravaged by the sword formation and the 1,000-feather blade, Hang Chen was so furious that he had lost his mind. His combat strength was also very weak. This was the result of his meticulous plan. He wanted to weaken Hang Chen's combat strength step by step and finally defeat him completely. Gale Thunder Strike. When Hang Chen swung the setting sun heavy sword and charged at him, Ji Tianqing used the ultimate move of the Flying Star sword technique again. He released 2 huge sword lights with all his strength and attacked Hang Chen from both sides. The 2 golden sword lights were 2 meters long and shone with a dazzling golden light. They carried an extremely violent wind as they slashed at Hang Chen fiercely. At that moment, the golden sword lights mixed with the wind and struck Hang Chen like a huge golden lightning bolt. Kaboom! A thunderous explosion suddenly exploded on the dragon viewing platform, causing the entire dragon viewing platform to tremble violently. Hang Chen was sent flying on the spot. He fell 5 meters away covered in blood and rolled a few times on the ground before coming to a stop. Wherever he flew, dark red blood splattered on the ground. It was a ghastly sight under the sunlight. Everyone on the platform was shocked by the terrifying power of the Gale Thunderstrike. They stared at the arena with their eyes wide open with complicated expressions on their faces. They saw that the Gale Thunderstrike had blasted a huge pit on the marble floor. Dense cracks extended all around it. The disciples of the 2 sects were stunned. Their faces were filled with disbelief as they exclaimed in surprise. "Oh my God! Is this really the strength of a Tongxian realm martial artist? Ji Tianqing is actually able to use such a terrifying sword technique without using a treasured sword? Even a LV7 Tongxian expert wouldn't be able to wield a sword from afar and execute such a powerful sword technique. It's incredible. Hang Chen was beaten so badly by him. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it." Everyone was discussing, but Ji Tianqing turned a deaf ear to them. He was still calm as he stared at Hang Chen, who was 10 meters away. Hang Chen was covered in blood. He climbed up shakily from the ground. He held the setting sun heavy sword with both hands and wanted to charge at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing frowned and said indifferently, "Hang Chen, you've lost. Give up struggling and admit defeat." His tone was cold and certain. It was not arrogant, but it contained great confidence. Hang Chen was instantly filled with humiliation. He glared at him with a ferocious face and roared furiously, "Impossible. I'll definitely defeat you. I'll never admit defeat." He had been accepted as a disciple by the Tianjian sect leader. He had the fighting sword bloodline and was at LV5 Tongxian realm. He was a martial arts genius who had been specially trained. How could he admit defeat to Ji Tianqing, who was at LV1 Tongxian realm? This was more humiliating than killing him. "Ah! Ji Tianqing! I'll kill you!" Hang Chen roared furiously. He activated the last power of the fighting sword bloodline and entered a state of madness. He charged at Ji Tianqing recklessly. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and said coldly, "Since you won't admit defeat, I'll have to beat you to the ground. It's also a good opportunity for you to see my real trump card." This is the 5th chapter of the day. There's a 6th chapter at 20 p.m. Chapter 199. The Flying Star Sword technique was Ji Tianqing's ultimate skill, but it was not his trump card. At this point, Hang Chen had already been heavily injured by him, and his strength was weak to the extreme. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Hang Chen's momentum was gone and he was powerless to reverse the situation. There was no doubt that he would lose this battle. However, Hang Chen gritted his teeth and endured his injuries. He was still fantasizing about a desperate counterattack. Since that was the case, Ji Tianqing could only use his trump card to completely defeat Hang Chen and make him accept his defeat wholeheartedly. He slowly raised his palms with his left palm facing down and his right palm facing up. He pressed his palms together and activated the sword embryo in his body with all his might. Buzz! Amid the buzzing sound, Ji Tianqing's palms lit up with a dazzling golden light. A small golden sword appeared. The small golden sword was only the size of a thumb, but it shone with a dazzling golden light. It emitted a soaring sword essence and a sharp sword chi that seemed to be able to tear the sky apart. There was no doubt that this was his sword embryo. Ever since he had reached the mystic comprehending realm, the sword embryo had turned from a shadow to a solid object. Such a huge change naturally caused his strength to increase by leaps and bounds. The sword embryo, which had condensed all of his skills in his life, naturally had unparalleled power. However, Ji Tianqing knew very well that although using the sword embryo in a battle had unparalleled destructive power, it was a method of harming oneself in order to kill 1,000 enemies. He would exhaust his true origin and be weak for half a month before he could recover. Therefore, he only used the sword embryo in his body at this crucial moment that determined the outcome of the battle. As he continued to circulate his qi, the golden sword embryo floating in his palms spun rapidly and became bigger and bigger. Buzz buzz. Buzz buzz. The sword embryo spun rapidly, emitting a soaring sword essence and emitting a series of buzzing sounds. After a few short breaths, Ji Tianqing opened his palms. His left and right palms were separated by more than a meter. At this moment, the sword embryo had become a dazzling golden sword that was more than a meter long. With him as the center, the area within a 30-meter radius was filled with extremely sharp sword qi, and the marble floor was cracked by the sword qi. Everyone on the dragon viewing platform was shocked. Their eyes were fixed on Ji Tianqing's sword embryo. The weaker disciples all thought that it was Ji Tianqing's sword aura. Only the deacons and elders of the two sects could see that it was not an ordinary sword ray, but a real divine sword that contained the power to destroy the heavens and earth. Hang Chen was also shocked. He stared at Ji Tianqing's sword embryo with wide eyes, fear and terror surging in his eyes. He was also a sword Dao genius, so he could feel how terrifying the power of the golden sword embryo was. Finally, Ji Tianqing pushed the power of the sword embryo to the limit. He stared at Hang Chen and shouted coldly. Hang Chen. Time to end this. As soon as he finished speaking, he controlled the sword embryo with both hands and attacked Hang Chen from 10 meters away. The dazzling golden sword embryo immediately transformed into a 3-meter-long golden giant sword, releasing a torrential golden flame. The dazzling golden flame was like a pair of wings on the sword embryo, pushing the speed and power of the sword embryo to the limit. The entire dragon viewing platform was enveloped by the golden light and became dazzling. The sword will that burst forth from the sword embryo carved out numerous cracks and ravines on the ground of the dragon viewing platform. Hang Chen was enveloped by the terrifying sword essence. His eyes were full of fear and his legs were weak. Looking at the incoming giant sword, he could only use all his strength to raise the heavy sword of the setting sun and release the final attack. Bang! The winged giant sword of the setting sun hit Hang Chen viciously, drowning his body and exploding with a deafening sound. At that moment, everything within a 30-meter radius turned into a field of golden light. It was so dazzling that everyone could not open their eyes. Even the scorching sun high in the sky was covered by the golden sword qi, appearing dim and lifeless. The dragon viewing platform was shaking violently as if there was a super earthquake. Huge ravines were formed on the ground. Many disciples were shaken to the ground. They could not stand steadily and fell to the ground. The violent strength qi turned into a golden hurricane and exploded in all directions, blowing the sand and stones of the dragon viewing platform into the air. Such a gorgeous and shocking sword move shocked everyone on the platform. It was unforgettable. After a long time, the golden light and dust that blotted out the sky gradually dissipated. The dragon viewing platform was quiet again. Ji Tianqing and Hang Chen's figures also appeared. Everyone looked over and saw Ji Tianqing standing proudly in the field. His face was still cold and indifferent. The 3-meter-long giant sword of the setting sun had already turned back into the sword embryo and was put back into his body. The dazzling and devastating sword move just now had consumed 80% of his vital essence. He was very weak and his spirit was also somewhat dispirited. However, the result of that sword move was shocking. On the ground of the dragon viewing platform, a huge pit with a radius of 3 meters was blasted out. There were hundreds of wide cracks around it, like a spider web. Hang Chen was seriously injured and unconscious. He was lying at the bottom of the crater covered in blood. Half of his body was buried by countless gravel and dust. The armor he was wearing was completely destroyed and turned into a pile of twisted scrap iron. His tall and burly body was also covered with crisscrossing wounds. There was also a bowl-sized bloody hole in his waist that went through his front and back. It was a miracle that he was not killed on the spot after suffering such serious injuries. Even if he was lucky enough to survive, his injuries were too severe. He would not be able to recover without 2 or 3 years of recuperation. The dragon viewing platform was silent. Everyone was stunned. They widened their eyes and opened their mouths in silence. They even forgot to breathe. Even the deacons and elders of the two sects, as strong practitioners of the origin elixir realm, were shocked by this. After a long time, the crowd finally recovered from the shock. Suddenly, the crowd was in an uproar. They exclaimed and roared in disbelief. "Oh my God! Is that guy still human?" He almost tore down the entire dragon viewing platform. He's only at LV1 of the Tongxian realm, but he has such terrifying destructive power. What kind of swordsmanship did he use? It's incredible. Today, I can see such a shocking swordsmanship and witness such a wonderful battle. It's simply a great fortune. Why? Why is it like this? How can Hang Chen lose? How can our Tianjian sect lose? Ha ha ha. We won. Ji Tianqing really created a miracle and defeated Hang Chen. Long Shan has finally returned to our Sky Pillar sect. Ji Tianqing. Good job. You're a great contributor to our sect. We're proud of you. Exclamations and shouts sounded one after another from the north and south sides of the dragon viewing platform. The people of the Sky Pillar sect were wild with excitement. Several disciples were dancing and cheering. Even Han Xiaosheng and Du Wu were discussing with surprise. The people of the Tianjian sect were grief-stricken. Their faces were extremely ugly as they discussed and cursed in disbelief. Especially Elder Master Tang and the Discipline Hall Elder, their faces were so gloomy that water was about to drip out. In this Longshan tournament, not only did they lose Longshan, but their newly recruited genius, Hang Chen, was also seriously injured and on the verge of death. It was simply miserable to the extreme. Today, the 6th update had arrived. Xiao He knew that the brothers and sisters were waiting anxiously, so he didn't wait until 20 o'clock to update. He updated in advance just to make everyone happy. Xiao He updated 6 times every day. This was known to all the brothers who had been following the updates for a few days. However, some people with bad intentions insisted that Xiao He only updated 2 or 3 times a day. For these people with ulterior motives, don't pay attention to them, and don't be misled by them. Chapter 200. The crowd on the dragon viewing platform clamored for a long time without quieting down. The people of the Tianjian sect were filled with grief, indignation, and humiliation. Elder Master Tang was too ashamed to announce the results of the competition. In the end, Chu Huaishan walked to the center of the field and announced the final result with a booming voice. The Sky Pillar sect wins the 3rd match. After saying that, he looked at the 2 elders of the Heavenly Sword sect with a face full of smiles and said loudly, "I announce that the Sky Pillar sect has won 2 out of 3 matches in this Dragon Mountain Grand Tournament. From now on, Dragon Mountain belongs to the Sky Pillar sect. According to the rules, the people of the Tianjian sect must evacuate Dragon Mountain within 2 days." As his voice fell, the disciples of the Fengyun courtyard let out a burst of excited cheers. Everyone knew that the victory of this tournament was not easy to come by, and it was also beyond everyone's expectations. Ji Tianqing was worthy of being called the #1 genius of the Fengyun courtyard. He had created an incredible miracle in front of everyone and won victory and honor for the Sky Pillar sect. Although the disciples did not participate in the battle, they were fellow disciples of the same sect as Ji Tianqing. They were all on the same side and shared honor and disgrace. Now that Ji Tianqing had won an unbelievable victory, the disciples also felt honored and proud. The people of the Tianjian sect had gloomy faces and did not say a word. Those disciples had been very arrogant and proud before, but now they were crying as if their parents had died. Elder Master Tang and the Discipline Hall elder were full of anger, but they could only hold it in. When they heard Chu Huaishan's announcement, the two of them had no choice but to salute and say in a low voice, "Congratulations to your sect for winning. Our sect has lost. We will follow the rules and evacuate Dragon Mountain as soon as possible." The Tianjian sect had already lost miserably enough. The two elders could not act shamelessly. That would only be more humiliating. They just wanted to leave the dragon viewing platform as soon as possible to avoid being ridiculed by the people of the Sky Pillar sect. At this point, this year's Dragon Mountain tournament was finally over. Ji Tianqing walked back into the crowd with an indifferent expression. He was surrounded by several disciples of the Wind Cloud Hall, as if he was the moon surrounded by stars. The deacon of the Tianjian sect rushed to the field and took Hang Chen, who was lying unconscious in the big pit, away. Then he rushed back to the Tianjian sect. With Hang Chen's severe injuries, if they were not treated in time, his life would be in danger. After a while, the people of the Tianjian sect left the dragon viewing platform one after another. When the two elders and deacons left, they didn't even say goodbye to the Sky Pillar sect. Clearly, they were extremely angry and disappointed. However, the people from the Sky Pillar sect were not in a hurry to leave. They continued to discuss on the dragon viewing platform for a long time. Han Xiaoxing walked to Ji Tianqing's side and said with a gratified smile, "Ji Tianqing, well done. Today, you have indeed created a miracle and defeated Hang Chen. You have truly brought honor to our dean. News of your battle with Hang Chen will definitely spread throughout the ancient realm of the stars and reach the ears of all major sects." After he finished speaking, he looked at the disciples of the Storm Hall. "Are you very envious of Ji Tianqing? Are you also fantasizing that one day you can be like him and make contributions to our sect and become famous in the ancient realm of the stars?" The disciples nodded one after another, their faces full of expectation and longing. Han Xiaoxing smiled and said earnestly, "I believe you have also seen that with Ji Tianqing's strength, he was not Hang Chen's opponent. So how did he defeat Hang Chen? It is because he is calm and wise. He knows how to use his strengths and advantages to combine the Array Dao and the Martial Dao to continuously weaken Hang Chen's strength. In the end, he defeated Hang Chen. In the past 2 months, I have often taught you to learn and apply it flexibly. You should see more and think more. Studying the Alchemy Dao and the Array Dao will also be of great benefit to your Martial Dao. Today, you have all seen that Ji Tianqing did this. Therefore, he created a miracle and defeated Hang Chen. If you can also be like Ji Tianqing, I believe that one day you will also become true geniuses and make a name for our sect." Han Xiaoxing's words immediately made the disciples' blood boil and they couldn't help but applaud. 2 months ago, when Han Xiaoxing said these words to them, they didn't have much of a deep feeling. At this moment, Ji Tianqing's performance proved this truth. Only then did the disciples truly understand and comprehend Han Xiaoxing's intentions. The martial Dao was the foundation of one's life. It was extremely important. Although the Alchemy Dao and the Array Dao were auxiliary studies, if they were thoroughly studied and used reasonably, it would also make everyone's martial Dao strength more powerful. Today's battle between Ji Tianqing and Hang Chen also gave the disciples of the Storm Hall a vivid lesson. Everyone's eyes gathered on Ji Tianqing. They regarded him as a great hero, a top genius, and the pride of the Storm Hall. As for Lu Mingyang, he stood in the crowd and was completely forgotten. No one paid attention to him, and no one blamed him. Everyone ignored him. He silently looked at Ji Tianqing, his heart filled with unwillingness and jealousy. His expression was very ugly. However, he had personally seen how Ji Tianqing defeated Hang Chen and was very impressed by Ji Tianqing's strength. He had to admit that Ji Tianqing was indeed a genius with courage and wisdom. He was qualified to receive such an honor. Whether it was courage, wisdom, or strength, Ji Tianqing could crush him. What qualifications did he have to be dissatisfied with Ji Tianqing? After a long time, everyone quieted down. Han Xiaoxing and Du Wu led the 9 disciples down the mountain and rode their chasing wind horses back to the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, was given special treatment. He was given the treatment that only those who had rendered meritorious service would receive. Chu Huaishan brought him on a spirit bird and flew high in the sky towards the Sky Pillar sect. In the Sky Pillar sect, Sect Master Chu Tianxing lived in the palace. He was sitting cross-legged in a secret room with an ancient bronze chessboard in front of him. Although there were crisscrossing lines on the chessboard, there were no chess pieces. Instead, there were some kind of array pattern. The chessboard lit up with white light and condensed into a white screen that looked like a mirror. The image in the mirror was the dragon viewing platform at the peak of Dragon Mountain. This bronze chessboard was called the Heaven Reading Disc. Like the star chart, it was a powerful heaven origin artifact. It was one of the many secret treasures of the Sky Pillar sect. Chu Tianxing sat in the secret room and used the Heaven Reading Disc to pay attention to the dragon viewing platform hundreds of miles away. He could see the situation of the Dragon Mountain tournament. Now that the Dragon Mountain tournament was over, the 2 sects had left. Chu Tianxing frowned and pondered for a moment before revealing a gratified smile and putting away the Heaven Reading Disc. Ji Tianxing, oh Ji Tianxing, I really didn't misjudge you. You are indeed the person shown by the star chart. Your wisdom and talent are on par with Yunyao. As long as I continue to secretly nurture you, you will become a genius on par with Yunyao sooner or later. Our sect is lucky to have a genius like Yunyao. Now we have another Ji Tianxing. God bless our Sky Pillar sect. Today's update will continue. It's a new week. Please recommend me. Chapter 201. In the vast mountain range thousands of miles away from the Dragon Mountain, there was a desolate mountain peak. Inside the mountain peak was the Demon's Cave. Ji Tianxing, Yunyao, and the others had entered this place before. Inside the Demon's Cave, there was a dark and cold secret room. The Blood Moon Infanta and the High Priest stood in the room, staring at a mirror on the wall. It was a 2-meter-tall oval-shaped mirror made of blood-red crystal. It contained a miraculous array formation and magic power. This was a powerful artifact of the demon race. Like the High Priest's smoke net umbrella, it was a heavenly origin-grade artifact. A slightly blurry image appeared in the mirror, showing the scene of the dragon viewing platform. The Dragon Mountain tournament had ended, and the Blood Moon Infanta and the High Priest had watched it for more than 2 hours. The 2 of them watched the entire Dragon Mountain Grand Tournament and witnessed Ji Tianxing defeat Hang Chen with their own eyes. Both of them were silent. Their eyes flickered with a dense cold light, causing the temperature in the room to become even colder. After a long time, the High Priest opened his mouth and said with a hoarse voice, "In my opinion, the previous Dragon Mountain tournament was just a small fight between the Tianjian sect and the Sky Pillar sect. This time, Ji Tianxing's participation in the Dragon Mountain Grand Competition has indeed made it extremely exciting. To be able to see that kid's strength and trump card, it was worth it for me to use more than a dozen spirit stones to activate the demonic mirror." The Blood Moon Infanta said in a deep voice, "High Priest, you already guessed that kid's talent was extraordinary and would become a big problem for us in the future. That's why you paid so much attention to him, right?" The High Priest nodded and said in a deep voice, "That's right. There's something strange about that kid. In just a short month, he actually reached the Mystic Comprehending Realm and defeated an expert at the 5th stage of the Mystic Comprehending Realm. It's really unbelievable." The Blood Moon Infanta frowned and said in a low voice, "Back then, you detected the aura of the heavenly star bead in his body. Now, it seems that his monstrous talent is most likely related to the heavenly star bead. I only hate that I didn't kill him back then and allowed him to grow to such a level. If he's given a few more years, I'm afraid he'll grow to the point where he can stand shoulder to shoulder with me." The High Priest sneered and said coldly, "So what? We only need to keep a close eye on him, and we'll be able to obtain clues and the whereabouts of the heavenly star bead from him." "That's good too." The Blood Moon Infanta nodded and said in an awe-inspiring tone, for the sake of the heavenly star bead and the revival of our race, let him live for a few more days." The high priest was silent. He frowned and pondered for a while before talking about another topic. "Dragon Mountain is just an ordinary treasure land. Even I am not interested in it. In the ancient realm of the stars, there are many places with spirit veins like this. Now, the Tianjian sect is wantonly excavating Longshan. It's almost emptied. Why would the two strongest sects in the star ancient realm fight so fiercely over this spiritual vein that is about to be abandoned? Especially the Tianjian sect. It seems that they are determined to win this Longshan competition. Is a hollowed-out abandoned mountain worth their unscrupulous fight?" Hearing this, the Blood Moon Infanta frowned and pondered. After a while, she asked tentatively, "High Priest, do you mean that there might be some secrets or treasures hidden in Dragon Mountain that the Tianjian sect is so reluctant to part with?" "That's right. I have this suspicion." The high priest's face was solemn, and his eyes were shining brightly. "However, this is only my guess. As for the exact reason, we still need to investigate before we can know." He thought for a while and said to the Blood Moon Infanta, "Infanta, take some people to the Tianjian sect. It's best if you can capture a disciple who is participating in the competition. When the time comes, I will interrogate him and see what the Tianjian sect is trying to do." "Okay, I'll go right away." The Blood Moon Infanta cupped her hands and left the secret room to carry out her mission. After returning to the sky-bearing sect, Chu Huaishan rode his spirit bird and landed outside the gate of the Fengyan courtyard. He saw that Ji Tianqing was very weak and had suffered heavy injuries, so he asked Ji Tianqing to go back to the Fengyan courtyard to treat his injuries first. "Ji Tianqing, go back to the Fengyan courtyard and recuperate. You have made a great contribution to the sect this time. I will go to the sect leader later and ask for a reward for you. I believe that the sect leader will reward you personally after you finish recuperating." Ji Tianqing smiled and cupped his hands. "Thank you, Elder Chu. I will take my leave now." After saying goodbye to Chu Huaishan, he returned to the Fengyan courtyard. After returning to his room, he quickly took out medicinal powder and white cloth from his 100 treasures brocade pouch to treat his injuries. Others only knew that he had defeated Hang Qin in public and created a miracle, but they didn't know how much effort he had put in to create this miracle. In order to defeat Hang Qin, he had done his best and used almost all of his abilities and trump cards. Before the competition began, he had already learned about Hang Qin's background. He knew that Hang Qin's martial strength was strong, but his talent in formations was very slow, so he used a sword formation in the competition. Even so, he was still unable to defeat Hang Qin and was even injured by Hang Qin, leaving several hideous wounds on his body. In the end, he was forced to use his trump card, the sword embryo, to completely defeat Hang Qin. Hang Qin was seriously injured and unconscious. His injuries were very miserable. However, Ji Tianqing didn't have it easy either. After using the sword embryo, he had consumed 80% of his true origin, and his strength was extremely weak. Even the sword embryo had become dim and dull, no longer showing its sharpness. His vitality was also greatly damaged. Fortunately, everything was over. He had won back Dragon Mountain for the Sky Pillar sect, so he would definitely be heavily nurtured by the sect. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing's pale face revealed a smile. There is no honor or treatment that can be obtained without sowing. I need to fight for it myself. Only by becoming stronger and showing my value to the sect can I be valued by the sect. Fortunately, I succeeded. Now, it can be considered that the clouds have parted and the moon has seen the light. I can finally cultivate in peace and continue to increase my strength. Muttering a few words in a low voice, Ji Tianqing started to circulate his energy to heal his injuries, recovering his weak physical strength and true origin. Unknowingly, a day passed. At dawn the next day, Ji Tianqing's injuries were no longer serious, and his complexion also returned to normal. Following this, he still needed to meditate and recuperate for half a month before he could recover to his peak state. And at this time, the news of the victory in the Dragon Mountain competition had already spread in the Sky Pillar sect. Not only the outer court disciples, but even the inner court disciples, many deacons, and elders knew the news of the competition's victory. The disciples of the Wind Cloud Hall even publicized the process of the competition, describing the battle between Ji Tianqing and Hang Chen as brilliant, full of ups and downs, and very gripping. Very soon, Ji Tianqing and Hang Chen's peak battle spread in the Sky Pillar sect, causing countless disciples to be shocked and discuss. Chapter 202. Early in the morning, Ji Tianqing finished his cultivation. He turned his head to look out the window and found that the sun had yet to rise. It was drizzling outside the window. The pitter-patter of rain fell on the leaves, making a rustling sound. Ji Tianqing walked to the window, opened it, and breathed in the fresh air. After entering the sect for so long, the sun has been shining brightly almost every day. It's rare to encounter rain, this is interesting. He whispered, and the corners of his mouth hooked up into a smile. At this time, he suddenly saw a graceful figure at the entrance of the Tempest courtyard. She was holding a light green paper umbrella, and her footsteps were light as she walked into the courtyard. The graceful figure wearing a long green dress was clearly a young girl. Although the paper umbrella covered the girl's face, Ji Tianqing felt that her graceful figure was somewhat familiar. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, and thought to himself, that young girl holding an umbrella came to the Tempest courtyard early in the morning. Who could she be? At this time, the door to a room opposite Ji Tianqing's room suddenly opened. Lu Mingyang, wearing a green robe, walked out with a face full of surprise and excitement. He quickly walked towards the young girl holding the umbrella. He strode in front of the young girl and blocked her path. He said with a heart full of joy, "Junior Xian, why have you come to the Tempest courtyard? It's still raining outside. If you're looking for me, you can send me a message, and I'll personally come to see you." Lu Mingyang's mood was too pleasantly surprised. Once he opened his mouth, a long string of words came out. The gentleness and adoration in his eyes couldn't be concealed. The young girl holding the umbrella was Xian. She slightly raised the paper umbrella and glanced at Lu Mingyang, who was blocking in front of her. "I'm sorry, I'm not looking for you. Please move aside." Xian's expression was calm, and her tone was indifferent. She then walked around Lu Mingyang and walked towards Ji Tianqing's room. Lu Mingyang was immediately stunned, and the pleasantly surprised expression on his face instantly froze. He stood there awkwardly in the drizzle. Looking at Xian's back, his heart was full of disappointment. When he saw Xian walking towards Ji Tianqing's room, his face immediately turned gloomy and his eyes flashed with hatred. Xian nimbly walked under the eaves and put away the paper umbrella. As soon as she raised her head, she saw Ji Tianqing standing by the window, looking at her with a smile. Xian was startled for a moment before a gentle smile appeared on her pretty face. Her voice was gentle as she said, "Tianqing, you're already up. It seems that I've come at the right time." Ji Tianqing of course understood that Xian was looking for him. He quickly opened the door and welcomed Xian into the room. After Xian sat down, he glanced at Lu Mingyang in the courtyard and closed the window. "Junior sister Xian, it's raining today. Why did you personally come to the Tempest courtyard to find me?" Xian nodded and revealed an extremely beautiful smile. "Last night, I heard grandfather talk about the Dragon Mountain tournament. Only then did I know that you took back the Dragon Mountain for our sect and even got injured. Last night, I wanted to come and see you, but it was too late. I guessed that you must be recuperating, so I didn't disturb you. Today, I came not only to congratulate you on your victory, but also to bring you some healing pills. You will definitely need them." After saying this, she took out a small white jade bottle from her ring and placed it in front of Ji Tianqing. "Here are 2 Tai Ching pills. Their healing effects are comparable to Jade Dew pills. I personally refined them." Ji Tianqing knew that Xian's grandfather was the great elder. Yesterday, he personally supervised the tournament on the dragon viewing platform. He originally wanted to decline, but he couldn't resist Xian Xian's insistence. He also couldn't bear to refuse Xian Xian's kind intentions, so he accepted the bottle. It just so happened that he had used up all his cultivation resources, so he didn't even have a single healing pill. Xian Xian sent 2 pills early in the morning, which solved his urgent need. Junior sister Xian Xian, thank you. Ji Tianqing sincerely thanked her. Xian Xian smiled and nodded. She chatted with him for a while, telling him to focus on recuperating. After a quarter of an hour, Xian Xian said her goodbyes and left. When Ji Tianqing sent her out of the room, he saw that Lu Mingyang was still standing in the courtyard. Although Lu Mingyang's entire body was soaked from the rain, he didn't feel it at all. He was still coldly staring at him. Ji Tianqing was too lazy to pay attention to him. He waved goodbye to Xian Xian and watched Xian Xian leave the storm courtyard. Only then did he turn around and return to his room. Not long after, just as he was about to take the Tai Ching pill to heal his injuries, there was a knock on the door. Big brother Tianqing, are you there? Following the knock on the door, Ji Ku's voice, which was filled with concern, entered the room. Ji Tianqing hurriedly put away the Tai Ching pill and opened the door. He saw Ji Ku standing outside the door. She was still wearing a long green dress, but it was changed to the special style of the spiritual medicine hall's disciples. Moreover, she didn't bring a paper umbrella, so her hair and dress were all wet. The thin dress clung to her body, revealing her graceful and moving curves. He could faintly see a large area of white and tender skin. Ji Tianqing hurriedly pulled her into the room and said with a somewhat reproachful tone, "Cuckoo, you silly girl. The spiritual medicine hall is more than 10 miles away from the spiritual medicine hall. Why didn't you bring a paper umbrella?" Although he said that, he had already found a clean handkerchief and helped Ji Ku wipe the rain from her body and face. Ji Ku didn't care about the rain at all. She even liked Ji Tianqing's protective action of helping her wipe her face. Her charming face revealed a smile and she hurriedly explained, "Big brother Tianqing, I was in a hurry to deliver the medicine to you. Therefore, I forgot to bring an umbrella when I went out." Ji Tianqing wasn't surprised by Ji Ku's occasionally muddle-headed personality. After helping Ji Ku wipe the rain, he sat down with her to talk. After the two of them chatted for a while, Ji Ku took out 3 jade bottles from her sleeve and placed them in front of Ji Tianqing. She introduced them to Ji Tianqing as if she was very familiar with them. "Big brother Tianqing, these are the pills that the spiritual medicine elder asked me to deliver to you. These pills are mysterious dragon pills. They are specially used to treat sword wounds. There are a total of 3 pills. Take one every 2 days. These are extreme blood pills. They are used to treat internal injuries. There are a total of 6 pills. Take one every night. These are recovery pills. There are a total of 12 pills. They can help you quickly recover your true essence." Hearing Ji Ku skillfully introduce the 3 pills, Ji Tianqing revealed a gratified smile. It seemed that Ji Ku had only been a disciple of the spiritual medicine hall for a few days, but she had already learned a lot. Ji Tianqing accepted the pills with a smile and remembered Ji Ku's advice. The two of them chatted for a while. Ji Tianqing finally felt relieved when he learned that Ji Ku was well taken care of in the spiritual medicine hall and that everything was going smoothly. After a quarter of an hour, Ji Ku said goodbye and left. When Ji Tianqing sent Ji Ku out, he saw Lu Mingyang still standing in the courtyard in the rain with a dazed look. Not long after he returned to his room, there was a knock on the door. Hearing the knock, Ji Tianqing shook his head with a bitter smile and whispered, "What's going on today? It's clearly raining. Why are they looking for me one after another?" When he opened the door, he saw a beautiful woman in a white dress standing at the door. Chapter 203. Without a doubt, this beautiful woman in a long white dress was Yunyao. Although she didn't bring a paper umbrella and seemed to have come to the storm courtyard in the rain, there was no trace of rain on her face. However, there was not the slightest trace of rain on her body. Her temperament was as cold and otherworldly as before, like a fairy who did not eat the food of mortals. Since she was a fairy from the ninth heaven, how could her clothes be drenched by the rain? Eldest senior sister, why are you here? Ji Tianqing greeted Yun Yao with a smile and welcomed Yun Yao into the room. I'm here to see you. Yun Yao nodded slightly and stepped into the room. After sitting down, she looked at Ji Tianqing with concern and asked, how are your injuries? Ji Tianqing waved his hand and explained, they're only minor injuries. I'll recover after 2 days of rest. Yun Yao nodded and took out 2 things from her ring, placing them in front of Ji Tianqing. These 2 things were a black ring and a small white jade bottle. Yun Yao explained to him, the sect leader already knows about the Longshan tournament and is very satisfied with your performance. The sect leader asked me to bring these 2 things to you. Take them. Ji Tianqing looked at the black ring and the small white jade bottle and asked doubtfully, there must be pills in the bottle. I know that. But, eldest senior sister, what kind of treasure is this ring? Yun Yao explained to him, this is a top-grade profound-level treasure, a space ring. There's a small space in the ring that can store daily necessities. Ji Tianqing understood as soon as he heard this. The effect of this thing was basically the same as his 100 treasures pouch. He already had 100 treasures pouch and didn't need a space ring. However, Yun Yao persuaded him, junior brother Tianqing, although this space ring is exquisite, it's not a particularly rare treasure. The elders, deacons, and elite disciples all have them. Furthermore, the sect leader specially asked me to give this to you. You must accept it. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, in that case, I'll accept it. Thank you, senior sister. Yun Yao warned again, there are 2 dew pills in that jade bottle. They can help you quickly recover your injuries and true essence. You should be able to use them. The competition has just ended, and the Tianjian sect is in the process of handing over some things to the Tianjian sect. You should focus on recuperating for the next few days. Ji Tianqing accepted the interspatial ring and the white jade bottle before chatting with her for a while. After a while, Yun Yao got up and left. When Ji Tianqing sent her off, Lu Mingyang finally did not continue to stand in the courtyard in the rain. For the next few hours, Ji Tianqing wanted to take medicinal pills to heal himself, but he was unable to do so. Every once in a while, someone would knock on the door and visit with gifts. Most of these people were disciples of the Storm Hall. Everyone was full of admiration for Ji Tianqing. They came to check on his injuries and gave him some medicinal pills and gifts, taking the opportunity to get closer to him. After all, everyone knew that Ji Tianqing was now an influential figure in the outer sect. He was a hero of the Sky Pillar sect, and his future was limitless. What Ji Tianqing didn't expect was that after he sent away 6 or 7 disciples, Emo and Shi Jingsheng also came knocking on the door with gifts. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Shi Jingsheng and Emo standing outside, looking at him with a smile. Senior Marshal Brother Ji, we've come to see you. Senior Marshal Brother Ji, we took the liberty to disturb you. Please don't take offense. Seeing their smiling faces, Ji Tianqing couldn't treat them coldly, so he led them into the room. After entering the room, the 2 didn't even sit down before they simultaneously cupped their hands and bowed to Ji Tianqing. They said in a sincere tone, Senior Marshal Brother Ji, we came here today mainly to see how your injuries are. In addition, we also want to take this opportunity to apologize to you for the mistakes we made in the past. When we first entered the Storm Hall, we weren't familiar with each other, so there were many misunderstandings and some unpleasant quarrels. At that time, we were short-sighted and repeatedly criticized Senior Marshal Brother Ji. Now, every time we recall those words, we feel ashamed and uneasy. The 2's expressions didn't seem to be fake at all. Their sincere apologies surprised Ji Tianqing. However, he didn't show it on his face. He faintly smiled and said, we're all disciples of the same sect, and we're all geniuses of our respective countries. It's normal for us to be arrogant and conceited. Emo and Shi Jingsheng repeatedly nodded and said, that's right. In the past, we were all famous young geniuses in our respective countries. We considered everyone beneath our notice and were used to being arrogant. Now that we've entered the sect, we've seen the true world of martial arts. Our horizons have been broadened, and we've realized that there is always a mountain higher than the other. We've realized how laughable our conceit was. Senior Marshal Brother G, please don't take our previous arrogant words to heart. Please don't lower yourself to our level. Ji Tianqing could tell that after what had happened at the Dragon Mountain tournament, the two of them truly admired him. However, the more important reason was that the two knew that he would definitely rise in the future and become a disciple that the sect would focus on cultivating. Under these circumstances, the two were definitely worried that he would retaliate or suppress them afterwards. Therefore, the two hurriedly came to apologize, hoping to bury the hatchet and reconcile. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but reveal a faint smile. He was somewhat moved in his heart. After all, we were born in a world of martial arts where the strong prey on the weak. The strong are like dragons, and the weak are like ants. No matter whether it's changing the rudder according to the wind or seeking advantages and avoiding disadvantages, everyone will despise the weak and respect the strong. What a realistic human nature. Ji Tianqing was not a narrow-minded person. Of course, he wouldn't harp on those trivial matters. Emo and Shi Jingqing didn't have any deep hatred for him. It was just a verbal dispute. Since the two of them had come to his door to apologize, and their attitude was very sincere, he just laughed it off and threw all the old grudges to the back of his mind. Junior Marshal brothers, don't worry about anything. In the future, we'll still be brothers in the same sect. We'll still have to take care of each other in times of danger. As for those trivial matters before, I won't take them to heart. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, Shi Jingqing and Emo both smiled. They were finally relieved. The two chatted with Ji Tianqing for a while. They each gave him a few spiritual fruits and elixirs before leaving. Ji Tianqing sent the two away and sat in the room for a while. At noon, when no one came to visit, he entered the secret room. He first took out the space ring that Yunyao gave him. After playing with it for a while, he figured out how to use the ring. The space in this space ring was the same as the space in the 100 treasures brocade pouch. They were both as big as a room. In contrast, the space ring was more convenient to carry around than the 100 treasures brocade pouch. Therefore, Ji Tianqing used his soul sense to refine the space ring. Then, he put the ring on his hand. He stored the elixirs and gifts that everyone gave him in the space ring. It was convenient for him to use them at any time. As for the little ice fox and the little black dragon, they were still in the 100 treasures brocade pouch. In the future, the pouch would only be their nest. Chapter 204. After sacrificing the spatial ring, Ji Tianqing sat in the spirit gathering array and started to heal his injuries. In the morning, everyone gave him countless medicinal pills, enough for him to go into seclusion to heal his injuries for a month. And among the medicinal pills that everyone gave, the Jade Dew pill and Extreme Clear pill were obviously of the highest grade and had the best effects. Ji Tianqing took the 2 Extreme Clear pills that Xian gave him and started to refine the medicinal power to heal his injuries. The light in the secret room was dim and he couldn't see the changes in the sky outside. Time also seemed to pass faster. Under the catalysis of his true essence, the Extreme Clear pill turned into a gentle and majestic medicinal power, like a calmly flowing river, flowing endlessly into his meridians and limbs. As he refined and absorbed the medicinal power, he secretly sighed in his heart. Xian's attainments in alchemy must be extraordinary to be able to refine such a powerful Extreme Clear pill. In terms of the healing effect of medicinal pills, the Extreme Clear pill was not inferior to the Jade Dew pill refined by the Spirit Medicine Hall. Time flew by quickly and Ji Tianqing's injuries were also quickly recovering. His true essence was also quickly recovering. The dim sword embryo in his body also became brighter and brighter, recovering its strength. 3 days later, he refined the medicinal power of the 2 Extreme Clear pills. His injuries were basically healed and his strength was also recovered by 50%. Next, Ji Tianqing took another 2 jade dew pills and continued to cultivate. Another 3 days passed and his strength finally recovered to its peak. However, the medicinal power of the jade dew pill still remained and was still majestic and surging. Ji Tianqing continued to cultivate, using the medicinal power of the jade dew pill to try to refine the first aperture point of the first main meridian. The 4th level of the path of the sword required him to refine the 72 aperture points of the 9 main meridians. Once the 8 aperture points of each main meridian were completely refined, his strength would correspondingly increase by 1 level. Tempering the acupoints was much more difficult than tempering the meridians. It required greater endurance and willpower, as well as more meticulous control of true essence. Ji Tianqing cultivated unhurriedly and tried little by little, constantly exploring and accumulating experience. With the help of the jade dew pill's medicinal power, he still spent a day before he finished refining the first acupoint. However, after the first acupoint was successfully refined, the increase in his strength was negligible. However, he had succeeded in taking the first step and accumulated some experience in refining acupoints. He was excited and gratified. Phew! Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation, exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and opened his eyes. Originally, I would have needed to recuperate for half a month to recover. However, with the pills that Xian and eldest senior sister gave me, I only needed 7 days to recover. He smiled, got up, and walked out of the secret room. When he returned to his room, he saw the sun shining brightly outside the window. It was morning. Ever since I went on a mission with eldest senior sister, I haven't been to Graydon Palace in so many days. I wonder if that stinky old man will blame me. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing left the Tempest courtyard and rushed towards the Great Peace Palace. 15 minutes later, he reached the gates of Great Peace Palace. He greeted the sword servant guarding the gates and entered the Great Peace Palace, heading straight for the 3rd courtyard. When he entered the 3rd courtyard, he saw Xiang Wuji carrying a white jade water bottle, watering the medicinal plants in the nursery. Those medicinal plants had already grown to a foot tall, the leaves were crisp and green, emitting a rich vitality and fragrance. Xiang Wuji was watering as he hummed a little tune, seeming to be in a good mood. Ji Tianqing walked to his side, cupped his hands and bowed. "Senior, Junior has come to see you." Xiang Wuji didn't even turn his head as he continued to water, curling his lips and said, "You haven't come for almost a month. I thought you weren't coming. Why did you think of coming to see this old man today?" Ji Tianqing smiled and explained, "Senior, in this period of time, Junior had too many things to do. Not only did I have to help eldest senior sister with her mission, I also had to prepare for the Dragon Mountain tournament." Before he could finish, Xiang Wuji waved his hand and interrupted him. All right, what's there to explain? How could this old man not know what you've been doing in this period of time?" Xiang Wuji's tone was a bit impatient. It seemed that he knew Ji Tianqing's movements like the back of his hand. Ji Tianqing understood his temperament, so he didn't feel awkward at all. He just smiled silently. At this time, Xiang Wuji smacked his lips, revealing a rare gratified smile. "You did well in the Dragon Mountain tournament. You've made our sky-bearing sect proud." Xiang Wuji didn't praise people easily. Ji Tianqing had known him for so long, but he hadn't been praised many times. For him to say this, it was clear that he was very satisfied and gratified. Ji Tianqing smiled and said a few modest words, then went to find a broom and a bamboo basket to clean the courtyard. Xiang Wuji turned his head to look at him, frowning and asking, "Are you addicted to sweeping? Put down the things, you don't need to sweep today. Come, use the flying star sword art. This old man wants to see how you're doing." With that, he put away the water bottle and looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. Ji Tianqing did as he was told. He hurriedly walked to the center of the courtyard and used the 1,000-feather blade. He released 9 1-meter-long golden sword lights and stabbed over 1,000 times in 5 breaths of time, causing the courtyard to flicker with sword lights and sword chi. After Xiang Wuji finished watching, he revealed a mocking smile. "You really know how to take advantage of the situation. What this old man taught you was to use 3 sword lights to stab over 1,000 times in 5 breaths of time, but you used 9 sword lights. Ji Tianqing smiled and explained, this junior's strength is low, so of course I'm not as strong as seniors. Of course, this junior is working hard to be like you one day, using 3 sword lights to stab over 1,000 times in 5 breaths of time. Xiang Wuji nodded and said, alright, use the second move. Ji Tianqing released 2 more sword lights and slashed at the ground 10 meters away. The sword lights and the wind gathered into a golden thunderbolt and hit the bluestone ground hard, creating a big hole in the ground and splashing out countless stones. Xiang Wuji immediately frowned and scolded, you brat. Do you want to destroy this old man's courtyard? Later, you will clean the courtyard for this old man and fill up the hole. Ji Tianqing had expected this, so he was not surprised. He just smiled and nodded. Senior, how is my practice of these 2 moves? Xiang Wuji stroked his white beard and nodded, not bad, barely qualified. Today, this old man will teach you the 3rd move of the Flying Star sword art. Open your eyes wide and watch. With that, he walked to the center of the courtyard and waved his hands to make a special gesture. He drew out a mysterious path and activated his vital core. The next moment, he put his palms together in front of him and pushed forward. Red Dragon Flash. A 2-meter-long sword ray that was as red as fire shot out from his palms and charged forward at a speed faster than lightning. When the red fire sword light stabbed forward, it created a surging wave of fire like a lifelike fire dragon. The power of the sword light was extremely terrifying. The entire courtyard was filled with sword chi and cracks appeared on the ground. The air became extremely hot as if it had been ignited. Boom! With a flash of the red fire dragon, the sword light shot 50 meters away, crossed the courtyard wall and hit a towering tree outside the courtyard. That tree was hundreds of years old and its trunk was as thick as a water tank. Its lush branches and leaves covered an area of 30 meters, almost covering the entire courtyard. However, the crimson dragon's flames instantly broke the tree in half. The dense leaves and branches were also covered by the monstrous flames and were instantly burned to ashes. There will be a 6th update at 20 p.m. Looking for a few recommendation tickets. Chapter 205. Ji Tianqing stared blankly at the towering tree outside the courtyard, his heart filled with shock. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would have found it hard to believe that a towering ancient tree as thick as a water tank could be smashed into pieces and burned into charcoal from dozens of meters away. What kind of destructive power was this? Was this still considered a sword art? Xiang Wuji casually executed the red dragon flash and turned to look at him. He said calmly, "Kid, did you see it clearly?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "I've seen it clearly, but I'd like to ask Senior to explain the circulation route and force exertion method of this sword technique." On the surface, the power of Scarlet Dragon Flash was indeed terrifying. However, the method and route to use this move were extremely complicated. Xiang Wuji explained it to Ji Tianqing in detail, and Ji Tianqing was able to comprehend the crux of it. He understood the essence of this sword technique. He frowned and thought for a while. Then he said to Xiang Wuji, "Senior, when you taught me this sword art, you used greenwood elemental vital energy. Why were you able to use fire elemental vital energy just now?" "You're stupid." Xiang Wuji stared at him and said, "When a martial artist reaches the sky origin realm, he can gather the power of the 5 elements and use the 5 elemental vital energy at will. Experts of this realm can fly in the sky and burrow into the ground. They can also tread on water and tread on fire, moving unhindered between heaven and earth. When I executed the red dragon flash just now, I only used 10% of my power. If I used all my power to execute the red dragon flash, the red dragon flash would be 100 meters long and could destroy a small mountain." Ji Tianqing didn't know much about the sky origin realm. After all, this realm was too profound. It was just a legend to him. Hearing Xiang Wuji's explanation, he was not only shocked, but also looked forward to it. Of course, he finally understood Xiang Wuji's power. He was the legendary Sky Origin Realm martial artist. He looked confused and asked again, "Senior, you already control the power of the 5 elements and can control fire elemental vital energy. Of course you can execute the Red Dragon Flash. But I'm only in the ethereal realm and my natal vital energy is of the metal element. How can I practice the Red Dragon Flash?" This question made Xiang Wuji frown. He was hesitant. After thinking for a while, he explained, "This is a problem. I was careless. The first 2 moves of the Flying Star sword art that I created can only be used by martial artists of the Origin Core realm. This Red Dragon Flash can only be used by martial artists of the Sky Origin realm. But since you understand the essence of the Red Dragon Flash, you can practice this sword art. Even if you don't have fire elemental vital energy, you can replace it with metal elemental vital energy. The sword art is a sword arts, a sword art is a sword art is a sword art is a sword arts. You should practice it first. Once you reach the Sky Origin stage, you will be able to unleash its full potential." Hearing Xiang Wuji's words, Ji Tianxing understood what was going on and hurriedly cupped his hands in thanks. Next, he practiced Estes Flash. The first time he used the Red Dragon Flash, he successfully channeled his vital energy and released a 2-meter-long golden sword radiance. The golden sword radiance emitted a faint outline of a divine dragon. Even though it was not as majestic as Xiang Wuji's Red Dragon Flash, it was still domineering. Boom! Amidst the muffled sound, the golden dragon-shaped sword light flew out 20 meters and hit the bluestone wall of the courtyard. The wall immediately caved in, and a few cracks appeared on it. Xiang Wuji felt a little heartache, but he was still pleased. He smiled in satisfaction. "Huh, you're not bad. You managed to use the Red Dragon Flash on your first try. However, this old man used the Scarlet Dragon Flash, while yours can only be called the Golden Snake Flash. Kid, you still have to work hard and practice diligently." Ji Tianxing naturally understood that it was his first time practicing the Scarlet Dragon Flash, yet he was able to achieve such an effect. How astonishing was that? Xiang Wuji mocked him because he was afraid that he would become arrogant. He practiced a few more times and listened to Xiang Wuji's guidance. His understanding of Red Dragon Flash deepened, and he was at the beginning. Unknowingly, it was already afternoon. Xiang Wuji was going to take his afternoon nap again. Ji Tianxing bid farewell and left. After returning to Towering Sky Peak, he went to the outer sex chores yard. He explained the situation to the chores yard's deacon and asked the chores yard to send a few chores yard workers to the Grand Peace Palace to repair the old man's yard and walls. After all, he was not good at this kind of stone and wood construction work. It was usually done by the chores yard. After explaining this matter, he returned to the storm yard. Just as he entered the yard, he saw a few disciples standing under the banyan tree in the yard. They were discussing something in low voices. He did not pay them any attention and walked straight to his room. Just as he walked to the door, Nia Hao next door opened the door and greeted him. "Brother Ji, how are your injuries? I've been in seclusion for a few days. I'm completely healed now. Thank you for your concern." Ji Tianxing nodded and smiled at him. Nia Hao looked at the disciples under the banyan tree and said to Ji Tianxing with a serious expression, "Brother Ji, there's something you might not know. Something happened at Dragon Mountain." "Dragon Mountain? Something happened?" Ji Tianxing frowned. His eyes revealed a trace of confusion. "We won the competition. It's been 7 days. The Tianjian sect should have returned Dragon Mountain to us. What could have happened?" Nia Hao explained with a serious expression, "The Tianjian sect kept their promise. They evacuated everyone within 2 days and returned Dragon Mountain. In the past few days, the deacons of the sect have brought a large number of chores yard workers to Dragon Mountain. They have begun to take over Dragon Mountain. However, just yesterday, a group of chores yard workers in charge of mining suddenly disappeared without a trace. No one knows if they're dead or alive. At this point, Niehao frowned. His tone was heavy. 10 odd job disciple disappeared right in front of everyone's eyes. Everyone suspects that the Tianjin sect did it. After all, they lost the competition. They must be holding a grudge. The news has already spread throughout the sect. Everyone at Dragon Mountain is in a state of panic. The chores yard workers don't dare to enter the mountain. I heard that the sect master was very angry when he heard the news. He sent senior sister Yunyao and the outer sect elders to investigate this matter. I just saw senior sister go to Elder Chu. She should be discussing this matter with Elder Chu right now. Ji Tianqing had a plan in his mind. He vaguely felt that this incident at Dragon Mountain would cause another storm. He frowned and thought for a moment. Then he turned and walked towards the door. Niehao was startled. He quickly asked, "Brother Ji, what are you doing?" "I'm going to see what's going on." Ji Tianqing quickly walked out of the storm courtyard and walked towards the palace where Chu Huaishan lived. Chapter 206. Ji Tianqing was now an influential figure in the outer sect, and with the Sky Pillar token, he could move freely within the Sky Pillar sect. He entered the palace where Chu Huaishan lived, and when he was still outside, he heard Chu Huaishan and Yunyao's voices coming from inside the palace. Reporting to Elder Chu, disciple Ji Tianqing requests an audience, he reported as he cupped his hands at the entrance of the palace. Chu Huaishan was obviously startled, but he immediately said loudly, "Come in." Ji Tianqing stepped into the palace and saw 3 people inside. In addition to Yunyao and Chu Huaishan, Han Xiuxing was also present. Seeing him arrive, Chu Huaishan asked in a concerned tone, "Ji Tianqing, have you recovered from your injuries?" Yunyao and Han Xiuxing also looked at him, their eyes filled with concern. Ji Tianqing nodded and cupped his hands. "Thank you for your concern, Elder Chu. This disciple has been in seclusion for 7 days to recover from my injuries." "That's good," Chu Huaishan nodded slightly. "Do you have something to report? Or, do you need any cultivation resources?" Ji Tianqing hurriedly explained, "Elder Chu, this disciple heard that something had happened to Dragon Mountain, so I came to see if I could do anything to help." Chu Huaishan revealed a gratified smile. "That's good. Dragon Mountain originally belonged to the outer sect, and you are the role model of the outer sect disciples. Now that something has happened to Dragon Mountain, it is rare for you to take the initiative to share the burden of our sect." Han Xiuxing also nodded in agreement. As the saying goes, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. "Ji Tianqing, since you took the initiative to care about this matter, you will definitely be able to take on great responsibilities in the future." Faced with Chu Huaishan and Han Xiuxing's praise, Ji Tianqing hurriedly said a few words of modesty. Next, Chu Huaishan and Yunyao continued to discuss the matter of Dragon Mountain. Yunyao said with a serious expression, "The news that has been circulating in the sect is that 10 odd job disciples who were mining the ore veins have gone missing. Actually, after what happened yesterday, the sect leader had already ordered the 2 deacons stationed at Dragon Mountain to personally investigate this matter. However, the 2 deacons have also gone missing. Even now, there is still no trace of them. No one knows if they are dead or alive." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing suddenly frowned, and his expression became dignified. If it was only 10 odd job disciples going missing, it was not a small matter, but it was not a big matter either. However, the 2 deacons who were stationed at Dragon Mountain had also disappeared. This matter had become very serious. But anyone that was able to assume the position of a deacon in the Sky Pillar sect required a strength at least at the first level of the Origin Core stage. There were very few Yuan Dan experts, and every single one of them was capable of assuming great responsibility. And after Long Shan's accident, 2 deacons went missing at once. To the Sky Pillar sect, this was not only a huge blow and loss, but also an intolerable provocation. If this was really the doing of the Tianjin sect, the Sky Pillar sect would definitely not swallow their anger. They would definitely seek justice. After that, Chu Huaishan introduced some information before and after the incident, allowing everyone to have a better understanding of Dragon Mountain's matter. After understanding Dragon Mountain's situation, Chu Huaishan and Yun Yao decided to set off and head to Dragon Mountain to conduct an on-site investigation. After all, they were still unable to make a conclusion based on the clues that they currently possessed. They were unable to determine who exactly did this. Seeing that Chu Huaishan and Yun Yao were about to set off, Ji Tianqing hurriedly said, "Elder Chu, this disciple requests to go with you. I can contribute a little to the sect." Chu Huaishan instantly frowned and was slightly hesitant. "Ji Tianqing, your injuries have just healed, so it's not suitable for you to go out. Moreover, there is something fishy about this matter. I'm afraid it's not a small risk." To him, Ji Tianqing was now the outer court's #1 genius, a future inner court's elite genius, and a cornerstone of the sect. He didn't want Ji Tianqing to take any risks. If anything happened to him, it would definitely be a heavy loss for the outer court. However, Yun Yao thought for a moment and nodded. "Elder Chu, junior brother Tianqing previously helped me complete the mission that the sect master gave him. He even received a reward from the sect master. Dragon Mountain is our sect's territory. This time, we're going to Dragon Mountain to investigate. It shouldn't be too dangerous. Let him come with us." Since Yun Yao had spoken, her words vaguely revealed the sect master's thoughts and intentions. Of course, Chu Huaishan wouldn't object. "That's good. Ji Tianqing is willing to share our worries. We can't refuse his kind intentions." Chu Huaishan nodded and led Ji Tianqing out of the main hall. Then, the three of them rode on their flying spirit beasts and flew high into the sky, rushing towards Dragon Mountain. Chu Huaishan rode on his own spirit beast, the fire bird, while Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao rode on her spirit beast, the red-crowned crane. In less than 2 hours, the two spirit beasts flew 300 miles and landed on the peak of Dragon Mountain. The dragon viewing platform on the peak of the mountain was still the same as 8 days ago. The ground was still full of holes and cracks that no one repaired. Chu Huaishan led Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao along the bluestone path halfway up the mountain. They wanted to enter the belly of the mountain to investigate. Ji Tianqing originally thought that after the Sky Pillar sect took back Dragon Mountain, they would definitely plant more herbs and rebuild the herb garden, restoring Dragon Mountain to its original beautiful appearance. However, along the way, he only saw a few teams of odd job workers opening up a few herb gardens on the mountain and planting some herbs that had a shorter growth period. Not long after, he followed Chu Huaishan into the cave halfway up the mountain and arrived at the depths of the mountain. When he arrived at the ore vein area, he saw that most of the odd job disciples were busy mining the ore vein. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown and ask Chu Huaishan, "Elder Chu, after our sect takes over Dragon Mountain, shouldn't we rebuild the herb garden and restore it to its original appearance?" Chu Huaishan smiled and explained, "Dragon Mountain has been damaged to this extent. If our sect wants to rebuild and repair it, not only will it consume a lot of manpower and financial resources, but it will also take at least 10 years. In these 10 years, there will be 3 more competitions on Dragon Mountain. Our sect may not be able to win every time. Once Dragon Mountain is taken away by the Tianjian sect, won't our sect's efforts to rebuild Dragon Mountain be taken advantage of by the Tianjian sect?" Ji Tianqing suddenly understood. No wonder the Sky Pillar sect didn't rebuild Dragon Mountain. He said with some worry, "Even if our sect doesn't spend any effort to rebuild Dragon Mountain, what's the difference between us and the Tianjian sect?" Chu Huaishan shook his head and said with a smile, "Of course there's a difference. The Tianjian sect recklessly excavates resources and wantonly destroys Dragon Mountain's spirit veins. Although our sect also excavates resources, we won't be as crazy as Dragon Mountain. Instead, we have a plan to excavate and protect Dragon Mountain to a certain extent. In addition, although Dragon Mountain is a land of treasured spirit veins, there are many such spirit veins in the Star Ancient Realm. Even if Dragon Mountain is completely destroyed one day, our sect can just find other spirit veins." After listening to Chu Huaishan's explanation, Ji Tianqing understood the Sky Pillar sect's attitude and didn't ask any more questions. At this time, Chu Huaishan also ordered him and Yun Yao, "I'll go check out the other mining sites and meet with the deacon stationed at Dragon Mountain." You two go together and investigate the site of the incident. See if you can find any clues. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.